Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Geek Addicts. We're here now with our second episode of our little side series here. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. It's been a week.
Tell me
uh,
about it. Work's been
but
killing me lately.
work hasn't been so bad. It's more just like the temperature really dropped in Connecticut recently, and it's been like
Yeah,
30 degrees every morning, and it's really hard to get up in the morning when it's like that cold.
yeah, it's been like that here too, and like it keeps fluctuating. Like it was back up into the mid 50s today.
Hmm. Yeah, it was weird. Like I left work and I had my full like sweatshirt and like hat and everything. I'm like, it's fucking hot outside now. What the hell?
It's
But
wild.
yeah, you just can't win with New England. It's always either it's too hot or too cold. There's no in between.
It really isn't, which is odd because uh, there's not a whole lot of places in the world that actually have what we think of as fall because of how north and south and all that works.
Yeah, it's weird how like despite like living with like winters up here, like no one ever seems to get used to them.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the thing about New England weather is it fluctuates so much you can't get used to anything.
Yeah, it's funny. I found it amazes. I feel like lately like traffic has just gotten worse and worse. Than it's ever been. Like I was leaving work today and like it was like backed up everywhere I went. I was
It's
trying
either
to
backed up or people are just insane on the road in general.
yeah, it's weird because I felt like it's kind of sad that the best time to drive I ever had was during COVID because no one was on the road. Um yeah, but nowadays it's like I can't go a week without seeing a car accident happen. Trying to get gas today was hell because like I have a Costco membership now
Mhm.
and I was going to use the Costco gas pumps, but they were so overpacked that they were overflowing into the parking lots and causing a traffic jam. And I was like, I took one look and just went, nope, and just kept
Next
going.
one.
Yeah, I was like, the amount of gas I would waste just idling, trying waiting in line would basically like counteract the price difference of just going to another gas station and paying more. So,
Yeah, no kidding.
yeah, it was one of those situations, but other than that, though, it's been okay. The new Star Ocean came out yesterday, so I'm looking forward to playing that pretty soon.
There you go. I've mostly just been focusing on Crisis Core,
Mm. Well, that's a good one.
which unfortunately I haven't beat as of this episode, which it would have been good to have done so. I wanted to, but didn't make it.
That's all right. We'll probably mostly focus on the two main series games that we're going to be talking about. In case anyone didn't know, we're talking about Final Fantasy for this episode, and
Specifically 7 and 8.
yeah, the first two PlayStation era games we talk about nine, but Matt hasn't gotten around to nine yet, so we'll save that for another time.
I'm a late bloomer with Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, seven and eight are very similar in like artistic style. Nine is very old school styled, so it kind of sticks out kind of like a sore thumb compared to the other two.
Yeah,
Not that
but
that's
from
a
what I was gonna say, what from what I've seen of it, I'm definitely looking forward to playing 9 because I like that kind of style.
if you liked seven, you'll definitely like nine because nine is so easy to pick up and get into. It's basically they took like the classics like four and particularly games like four,
Mhm.
and they just basically made it in the PlayStation style, and it's very I know some people don't like nine, but nine is like such a hard game to dislike.
This is just like your basic fantasy game kind of thing.
Yeah, they don't go with the whole like future like the steampunk or like cyberpunk styles that seven and uh the modern style that eight in particular went with. It's more back to like kings and queens, castle stuff, like medieval times.
I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. As you know, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so
Yeah, not nine. I think you'll like nine when you get around to it. It is
yeah,
very very refreshing, especially after playing eight.
yeah. I gotta say, when I first picked up 7, it was definitely a little off-putting. When I wasn't expecting all of that like steampunk kind of sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, seven's like oh so Final Fantasy is interesting because like when you go back into like the early days of the series, it was pretty fantasy all the way up until six, and six is still a fantasy game, Like it's got king's castles and everything, and it's very much in the style. But 6 is where they started adding like a lot of steampunk elements. Like there's like trains now and airships. The airship is more of a blimp in 6. It's 6 was kind of the start of it really shifting towards like a different style, and then 7 just straight up was like added like the cyberpunk elements and stuff.
Yeah, it's like cars and motorcycles and planes and rocket ships.
Yeah, but somehow 7 still feels fantasy-ish in a way.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But then you get to 8, and 8 is just straight up. We'll get to 8, but 8 is a very interesting Final Fantasy.
That's one of those ones I actually found myself trying to explain the GF system to my father-in-law earlier today, and I was really having a hard time conveying it in a way that made sense.
So my favorite part about you playing 8 was like you'd just message me randomly throughout the week being like, so what does this mean? And I'm just like, I don't have enough time in the day, Matt. Yeah, 8 is a very, very confusing game if you've never played an RPG before.
Well, that's the thing is I've played RPGs and stuff, and even my father-in-law, he played 7. He said he tried to play 8, but he just couldn't wrap his head around it. But that one in particular is just so different.
Yep, and the fun fact is that was my first RPG ever.
I can't imagine being a kid and trying to figure that out.
Did I ever tell you the story? I've told the story on other podcasts multiple times, but did I ever tell you the story about how I ended up with 8 rather than 7?
Yeah, you've told me how you saw like a friend playing it or playing 7 or something, and you got the Roman numerals wrong.
Yep. My 4-year-old self thought he was being smart and wrote 1 extra I, and I got 8 rather than 7.
Hey, well, I mean, he ended up getting a game that you ended up loving later in life. So
yeah, I mean, it's the reason why I'm a shameless fanboy for 8. So
hey, we've all got stuff like that.
I mean, I know it's not an amazing game, but I still love it for what it is.
I mean, once I got the hang of the GF system, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I still think it's weird that it's not a game that you grind in, but or one that it's better off not to.
Well, you grind in 8, but not exactly the way you'd think you're supposed to grind in that game.
Yeah, it's odd.
But I guess going back to 7, so 7 is obviously everyone knows the story. It was the first 3D entry in the series. It was the first one that really got RPGs to take off in the States. I mean, they were a thing beforehand, but it was the first one that made them mainstream. Because 7, everybody who had a PlayStation had 7. It seemed like that game. I mean, by today's standards, 7 doesn't look great. Particularly the overworld models where everyone looks like Popeye, kind of.
Oh yeah.
But I still think the pre-rendered backgrounds look pretty good for mid 90s, and the combat sections still look pretty decent.
I mean, I was pleasantly surprised when I started playing 7. Like, I don't know why, but PS1, I was thinking it would look a lot less good as it does. And a lot of the stuff I was actually really impressed with. It's like the cutscenes and stuff.
Yeah, like the CGI cutscenes are all very impressive. The only reason they don't look great by today's standards is the fact that 8 and especially 9 just look so much better.
Yeah, I actually, when I first started playing 8 after I finished 7, I thought it was a PS2 game just because of how much better it looked, like the character models and stuff like that.
So you played on the Switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you actually played the definitive edition, which actually cleaned the models up.
Yeah, they didn't the remastered version.
They didn't look that good on the PS1, I'll say. They look good, but not. They actually redid some of the models for the definitive edition to make it look nicer.
Okay.
So it doesn't actually look that good, but it still looks good for today's standards.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably seen the emoji I have over in our server that's like Squall's face. That's actually a reference to. There's a quote in 8 where, you know, the scene where they're at the waltz.
The dance.
Yeah, the
little animation right at the beginning where it shows them dance, Squall and
Renoa dancing. Yeah, so it's the cuts. It's the scene where it's after you did basically you get promoted to seed, and
Mhm.
they're having that celebration, and Renoa approaches Squall at the dance because Squall's being a loner like usual,
Yeah.
and she makes the comment saying that he's the most attractive guy at the ball, and the running joke for years was the PS1 model looks really fugly, so like everyone was it would always just cut to that face, and I actually made that face a emoji over in the server because it's great.
That's
But
awesome. I
they
probably just
cleaned.
didn't even realize what it was because like I usually am on Discord on my phone, so when I look at those like custom emojis, they're like so tiny. Like
Yeah,
I can barely make out what each one is.
it's harder to tell. The remastered definitive edition cleaned that up, so it actually looks pretty decent though. So the joke wasn't as funny in that one.
Yeah, fair
But
enough.
yeah, going back to seven though, what was your thoughts like doing the opening like bombing mission uh at the start of seven? Because that usually is like the make it or break it for a lot of people with seven.
I certainly wasn't expecting to be part of a terrorist group right at the beginning. Like that was a little bit surprising.
Yeah, like seven. A lot of people joke saying with seven that the most interesting part of the game is like literally like the first like couple hours where you're in Midgar.
Yeah.
Because
No, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say it's like because the game opens up after you leave Midgar, but it's like not as engaging as Midgar was because Midgar like goes quick, and once it's over, you're like all of a sudden the game slows to a crawl, and you're like, oh, I guess it's not all action terrorism for the first half.
But when I started playing it, I didn't think we were going to get out of Midgar. I thought it was just going to be in the city. And then when we actually leave and I see how big the world is, I was like really taken aback.
Hmm. You leave Midgar and you realize we're not even like halfway through the first disc yet.
Yeah, I've barely even scratched the surface with what this game has.
Yeah, I see. Midgar is funny to me because it is such a well-designed part of the game, but it goes by so fast and it's like super linear. Like by the time you're out of there, you're like, huh. It's like I don't know what to do now because like the world is so limitless all of a sudden. And
Yeah,
see,
that's exactly how I felt about it. Sorry.
seeing that as a kid, like, so I watched a friend play seven initially, and seeing that as a kid, I was always like, you can go anywhere. Like, how do you know where to go? And he's like, you just kind of have to figure it out. And I'm like this is tough, especially for a 4-year-old at the time,
Yeah.
um, who then picked up eight, and eight drops you right in the fucking overworld right away, and you're like, what do I do? But yeah, going back to the Midgar, there are so many things that happen in Midgar, and it is honestly probably one of the strongest openings to an RPG I think I've ever played.
Yeah, because you do like the whole bombing mission, and then you go back to the bar, right?
Yeah, so you do the bombing mission, then you fight the scorpion thing at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get tripped up by the poor translation of the dialogue there?
I honestly, I it's been 2 years since I did that, and I've only played it the one time, so I don't really remember.
So the trick to the scorpion fight is you don't want to attack it when its tail is up because that's when it does its like counterattack. But the way
Oh,
the translation is written makes it sound like you're supposed to attack it while the tail's up. Um,
oh,
a lot of players got tripped up by that initially because as much as I like seven, its translation is terrible. Like there is so many just like awkward. I mean, it's not unplayable, but excuse me, there are so many moments in this game where like you read something and you're like, what does that even mean?
yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I feel
But
like it's probably like that a lot, especially back then when translating stuff for games wasn't considered like that important.
yeah, like with the Final Fantasy series in particular, there was Final Fantasy IV infamously had a horrendous translation that was like very much like a literal translation of everything, and it was very like it felt very sloppily done. Like the only real iconic thing that came from that game was the "You Spoony Bard" quote, which um basically there's a scene where like one of your party members is fighting another party member that you are about to get in your party, and he's a bard. So like the wizard, Tella is his name, basically starts like yelling all these insults at him, and at one point he just calls him a spooty bard for no reason. That line has stuck with the franchise so like strongly that like they've kept it for every retranslation of 4 ever since.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Like there's nothing nearly as funny as that in like 7 or 8. Like 7 and 8's translation issues are more just kind of like grammar issues and just like stuff not exactly making sense because translating Japanese to English doesn't always mesh well.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna
lost in translation.
Yeah, because I was gonna say Final Fantasy VI, on the other hand, was had an actual like translator hired to like fix the game. Ted Woosley. He actually like his translation of 6 is iconic because he actually, rather than literally translating everything, he would rewrite stuff to make it make sense, and that's how we kind of got the famous Kefka like mad clown kind of like persona that's extremely popular with that game.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he left after the Super Nintendo era, so he didn't translate any of the games forward, and I think Square just had their internal team do it.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
I haven't gotten quite there yet.
Yeah, 7's is a bit rough around the edges, but getting back to the game itself, like you go from like this opening bombing mission to like you go back to the Seventh Heaven bar, and that's where you meet the rest of Avalanche, the terrorist organization.
Yeah, because they stick around for real long.
For a couple hours anyway. So
yeah.
There's a reason why you're only able to name. So in Final Fantasy, early Final Fantasies 1 through 9, you get to name your party members. Like whenever they join the party or whenever they appear on screen, you get the little text box will appear, and it'll be like the character's name, and if you want, you can change it to whatever you want if you want to personalize it a bit more. But that's usually a clear sign that, oh, this person's going to be important later on.
Yeah, this will be a playable character.
Yeah. I usually leave the names as their I usually leave the default names. I change them sometimes when I want to be funny. The only one in this game I change Eris into Aerith, which is her technical name because it was a translation error. They called it Eris. I always change it to Aerith just because I'm more used to that, but that's
Makes
just
sense.
Although sometimes I'll name her God damn it. so the text is always like, God damn it, Cloud. It's when I'm feeling immature. You can do shit like that.
That's always fun.
Another fun one is you name one of the characters I say, and then every character just turns into Foghorn Leghorn.
That's a new one. I don't think I've read that one.
Play do like any game where you can name the main character. Just name them I say, and every dialogue just turns into Foghorn Leghorn. It's great.
You know what's funny is a while back I was with a couple of friends. We were all playing the original Pokemon games. Like I think I was playing Red, my buddy was playing Blue, and one of our other buddies was playing Yellow. And we all just named them after anime characters, our characters, and whatever Pokemon we had. But I had named my character Vegeta. So, like, this is when Dragon Ball Z Abridged was still really huge. So, whenever that would come up, all we could think of was just, like, Nappa going, Vegeta! So, that's what I heard every time somebody said my name in that game. It's just, I don't know why, just the timing of it made me think of that.
It's fun how you can completely destroy the mood of a game by just changing the names around.
It's super funny. I love doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Going back to 7 though, like, so here we get introduced to like a couple major characters. We get so obviously the main character of this game is Cloud Strife, and he is apparently ex mercenary that used to work for the Shinra company, which is the quote unquote evil organization of this game.
Yeah.
And he used to be in their he supposedly was originally in their elite group of warriors known as the Soldiers. Very original name there.
Yeah, right. Final Fantasy is real original with their names.
Yeah, you know, Final Fantasy, there's only 16 of them, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, so we got Cloud, and then we also get introduced to a couple more characters. We got Barrett, who is a large Mr. T looking man with a gun for an arm.
Classic.
And then Tifa, the love interest, basically.
Yeah.
But she also is badass because she fights with her fists, and she's basically the brawler of this game, which is I enjoy. I like Tifa a lot.
I always love a good brawler, and I love Tifa's limit break.
Yes,
so machine.
We should talk about limit breaks real quick. In this game, so for a little backstory into Final Fantasy, limit breaks technically debuted in Final Fantasy VI, and they were known as desperation attacks. The thing about them is, though, they didn't trigger nearly as easily. You kind of had to be in like a dire situation of like the battle, and you'd kind of get them, hence the name desperation attacks, and they would basically just be a powerful attack that would kind of buy you some time. 7, on the other hand, makes it a full-on mechanic where basically as you take damage during the fight, you have a limit break meter that builds up, and once it builds up high enough, you get access to a character's limit break, and they usually have 4 limit breaks total. Each limit break has 4 levels, and some of the levels have multiple limit breaks connected to them. And you unlock these as you level up, although the level 4 limit breaks are a bit harder to find because you need specific requirements to get those.
Yeah, didn't you have to win clouds at like the gold saucer or something?
Yeah, some of them are like that. Like I know Kate Siths, or Kichi, however you want to pronounce that, his you find in a locker in the Shinra building wicked early in the game, and you can't do anything with it until way later on. But Tifa's, you have to play the piano in the flashback when you go to her house. Like that's how you get Tifa's. They're all like very cryptic.
Yeah, there's a lot of these kinds of details about how to find stuff that I had no idea about going through the first time.
It's all it's a surprisingly complicated game. Like there was a lot of stuff in 7 that you have to Seven's kind of a guide game, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of RPGs, in my opinion, are guide games because there's a lot of stuff you really got to figure out.
Yeah, JRPG specifically.
But talking about the limit breaks, I like to bring up Tifa's because Tifa's limit break is like the greatest fucking limit break in the game.
It absolutely wrecks.
In my opinion, because it's essentially a slot machine. And unlike the other ones where when you level up a limit break, you have to choose which one you want to use, Tifa's just stacks every time you unlock a new one. So like by the time you get her massive one, she has like 5 slots, and they just keep stacking up over and over again. And she just destroys shit with her limit break, especially if you get all Yaz. Yeah, all of the limit breaks are pretty fun though. Some are more useful than others. Like speaking of like characters, the character Aerith, hers is useful if you get it to level 4. The problem is there's no reason to get hers to level 4 because we'll get to that later. But yeah,
and, you know what's kind of funny is even though I knew what was going to happen with Aerith, I still put her on my team just because I needed a white mage.
Yep, they got that's actually a good segue into this game's other defining element, and that is the materia system. And the materia system is really cool because unlike traditional RPGs where you kind of like each character, so in like a non-job system style RPG, every character kind of has like their set abilities and they just kind of get them as they level up. The materia system is fun because it basically lets everybody's kind of a blank slate in a way. Like they have some features to them that are unique, but for the most part, you can mix and match different abilities to different characters using the materia system, which is essentially a bunch of these like little crystal orbs that you can equip to different weapons and armor, and it gives the characters like different magical abilities, different, like you can use thieving, all sorts of stuff, and it's very creative, and like you can like do a lot of crazy stuff with it. It's also very simple to like figure out as you play the game.
Yeah, and I really like how the game treats magic as an equipable item. And you could level up that magic, and you could transfer it to other characters, and it'll still maintain its level and effectiveness. This is honestly my favorite magic system that I've ever played in any game. Like it's so like versatile. You know, you can really switch things up. You can have somebody in your party who you know you don't usually have using magic, and you could just put stuff on them so that you could level the magic up. You could put it on
Hmm.
other people, but still be using the good stuff with your mages and stuff. It's I don't know. There's a lot of things I like about the materia system.
Yeah, and it makes you think too, because like certain armor and weapons have like linkable slots, and you certain like material work best when paired with another material. Like say you take a fire material and you pair it with an all materia, and it allows you to cast multicast on like character on different enemies using that spell rather than just single casting.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can do like an elemental materia, which if you link it to your weapon along with like say like a fire, it gives your weapon like fire like kind of effects in a
Yeah.
way, like stuff like that. And it's cool because you can experiment with it, and like it makes it the game very replayable in a lot of ways because you're always trying different things, like different ideas. And honestly, like as we'll get into it more with the next game, but it's very simple and refreshing for an
Yeah.
RPG.
And you know, just as a little like you know reference to that is it's going from the materia system to the draw system was it's a huge hurdle. That was a big part of the reason that made eight so difficult to figure out when I first jumped into it.
Yeah, when you needed a full on tutorial to teach you how to use your combat system, that's not a good that's not a great start to a game.
Right.
But going back to seven now, so early in Midgar, like we go on. So after the first kind of early bombing mission, you get a little bit of character development. Like you learn that Cloud and Tifa are from the same village and they knew each other as kids.
Mm.
Cloud's kind of Cloud's kind of a prick the first half of the game. Like he's
Yeah.
very standoffish, and he straight up is just like, I'm only in this for the money. Give me my pay, and so I can be on my way.
Mm-hmm.
And Tifa's kind of like, don't leave, please. And he's like, fine. Um, this game also has a relationship value system, which is fascinating and completely pointless in the long run of the game, but it's a thing you can do if you're that interested. Did you
Mm-hmm.
mess around with the relationship value system at all, or?
I didn't even know it existed until you had told me, like after the fact.
So, for those who don't know, the way this game works is there are key events that happen in the game, and depending on which character you have the highest relationship with, the scenes will change. Like there's particularly a date scene later on at the flying saucer where you can either end up with one of the three girl characters, or you can end up with Barrett. That's that's the hardest one to get because you have to go really out of your way to do it. But they completely play that one for laughs, which is very fun to me. We'll get to that more when we get to the gold saucer. But throughout the game, like there's points where, like, say, during the opening bombing scene, there's a part where Cloud ends up getting like separated from the rest of them, and
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of walking down the street and he encounters a flower girl who we don't know is important at the time, and you can either get a flower from her or you can just not, and she'll walk off. And by getting that flower, you can then use it later on when you're talking to Tifa, and you can either give the flower to Tifa or you can give it to Marlene, which is Barrett's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on who you give it to, you'll either get relationship points with Tifa or you'll get relationship points with Barrett.
Huh.
So it's kind of one of those things where you have to think about it. Like some of some of the quotes Cloud makes give different options. Like when Tifa asks to make him a drink, you can say like, "Give me something hard," and that'll like get points with Tifa for whatever reason. Just a whole bunch of random shit. Like there's a whole guide to it because you kind of, if you don't really do it, you'll probably end up getting you'll most likely get Aerith because Aerith has like the highest points by default.
Yeah, that's what I ended up getting.
Yeah, I know how to like cheat the system to get Tifa like easily because Tifa's like the second easiest to get.
Mm-hmm.
Yuffie's kind of a pain in the ass because Yuffie doesn't join the game till later on.
Although I think by that point you can have, you know, I think you can get her pretty early, like almost right after you leave Midgar.
You can get her. if you know what you're doing, you can get her the second you get out of Midgar and you get to one of the first forests.
Mm-hmm.
Because this game has 2 secret characters that you can unlock, and one of them is Yuffie. And Yuffie, literally, you find her by just wandering around like on the overworld in one of the forests that you see, and randomly a ninja girl will appear to fight you, and if you defeat her, she joins your party.
If you say all the right things.
Yeah, she can run off if you say the wrong things and steal your materia. It's Yuffie's kind of a pain in the ass in this game in multiple occasions.
Yeah, she's pretty annoying in Crisis Core too.
Oh yeah, she is in Crisis Core.
Yeah,
Right. I forgot about that. I usually think of her in like Kingdom Hearts or Advent Children, where she's at least like mature.
oh, fair enough. I didn't
What?
get very far in Kingdom Hearts, so I didn't get a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's basically a different character because Kingdom Hearts has its own universe, but that's besides the point. Um, so yeah, like after like so eventually we get to like this second like do you remember the train sequence where you have to like sneak through the train and like not get caught and then jump off and you end up in the like underneath Midgar in like the train yard or whatever?
Yeah, I think so.
There's so basically when they're heading to like the second bombing job. They're trying to get there on train, and basically the train detects that they're not who they're supposed to be, and basically an alarm goes off and you have to jump off the train.
Mhm.
And depending on how well you do, you'll either end up really close to your destination or you'll end up super far away. And if you're very far away, you have to go through this underground section where there's a bunch of random encounters. And it's basically, it depends on how much you really want to grind.
Mhm.
The reason, though, why I always get off as fast as I can and get to the near the beginning of the line is because if you actually walk all the way back there, there's 2 guards that you can fight like endlessly, and it is a prime grinding area.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that's a trick I learned early on. It's great for getting a few levels up. Um, but yeah, like so continuing on, then they go to the next like bombing mission, and this one doesn't go nearly as well because they actually Cloud ends up getting like knocked down into the lower slums of Midgar below, while the Tifa and Barrett are stuck up on the higher level. And this is where Cloud falls into the church and meets Aerith.
Yeah, which ironically is apparently the same way that Aerith met Zack.
Yeah, it's really funny. That's also what starts the whole Aerith relationship with Cloud, because Aerith in this game implies that she had a boyfriend in the past who never came back.
Mhm.
For people who've played Crisis Core, that is Zack. And Cloud reminds her of Zack in a lot of ways. More on that later because it's a little confusing. But
Yeah.
basically, when you first meet Aerith, you get this. You can talk to her. Been one of my favorite dialogue options is here, where you can. She'll ask if you remember her, and you can literally be like, "Yeah, I do," or you can be like, "Yeah, you're the slum drunk." That's how you get negative points with Aerith.
Jeez.
But yeah, that one's great. And then the Turks show up, who are like the secret service. They're basically like the secret. They're like the FBI of the Shinra, basically,
Mhm.
and they're just kind of watching Aerith. And the whole goal here is you got to escape the church with Aerith. And there's kind of a mini game that you do where like you have to go on these like rafters and like drop barrels on the different Shinra guards to help Aerith escape.
All right.
Or if you want to lower Aerith's relationship points, you can deliberately miss and make her fight all the battles, which lowers relationship points and helps her get experience. So it is worth it
No, that's fair.
because she won't die. Like it's not that challenging.
She's story important. She can't die. At least
Yeah,
until, it's important to the story that she does.
yeah, yeah. And then we escape from the church, and we kind of go through this cutscene where we go through Midgar, and eventually we end up at Tifa's house, and Tifa's mother basically tells Cloud, "Can you please leave? I don't want her associating with the soldiers anymore," because they're referencing Zack essentially.
Yeah.
And you get this really annoying mini game where you have to like leave Aerith's house without waking her up. And I swear to God, like if you were like just slightly off, she always wakes up. It's even harder somehow with an analog stick, and I don't understand how. You think it'd be easier, but
It was the same thing for me going forward a little bit. The like where you have to dress up as one of the not soldier, but one of the little like regular soldiers. And
oh, the
you're in a
parade.
little parade and was it Judon?
Yep.
Like I had the same problem trying to do that with the analog stick. It just would not work. But when I used the D-pad, it was fine.
Yeah, I fucking hate that parade. By the way,
I wasn't
I
a
always,
huge fan either. I got really mad at that part.
did you get the grenade for finishing it?
I think so. I don't remember. I know I
So,
didn't do as good as I could have done.
so just jumping in, there's a whole mini game where you have to do this like parade march thing, and like it's basically a kind of like a timing mini game, but it's so easy to fuck up because it's so precise and just lame. But
Yeah.
if you're supposed to like you get rewarded depending on how well you do, and you can get decent items. But if you completely fuck it up like I usually do, the guy's like, just give him a bomb, and you just get a grenade. But
There's
going
worse
back,
things.
yeah, I mean you'll use it eventually.
Yeah.
But going back to the Midgar, eventually you leave Aerith's house, and then of course she immediately finds you because of course she knew you would leave.
Mm.
And then we kind of hang out at this random playground that's just there, and we see this wagon go by with Tifa on it. And this is where we get to one of the most famous parts of the game, the wall market scene with
Mm.
the cross-dressing mini game.
Yes. Which is
So,
just silly.
so it's really funny to me that at the time this was considered like wicked, like out there for an RPG, but nowadays it's completely just like whatever.
Yeah.
When you did the mini game, did you like do like the full like get up, or did you just do the basic get by?
I did the basic because I didn't know that there was more stuff you could get. So I didn't get any of the what's it called, like the honeybee inn or whatever.
Okay,
I didn't even I don't even think I got in there. So
so getting in there is a little bit of it's a little cryptic. The way it works is you have to basically there's a guy standing outside of the honeybee inn, and you can basically you chat with you get to a certain point in the story like progression where you're doing the actual like cross-dressing mini game.
mm.
And essentially what you have to do is you go back and talk to the guy, and he basically chickens out that he doesn't want to go in, and he gives you his membership card, and that's how you can get into the honeybee inn.
Oh.
And the honeybee inn is wonderful because there's there's a couple options in there, like different room. It's basically a brothel for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And it's like a brothel mixed with the Playboy Mansion, I guess you could say. Only they're honeybees. It's
Mm.
Japan, but you get two options in there. You can either get the private room or the group room. The private room is really lame. All that happens is Cloud sees like a specter version of himself, and then has a mental breakdown.
That's really weird.
Yeah, and you get underwear. That's all you get for doing it.
Oh.
Um, the group room is you enter a bath. It's like a bath house, and a bunch of muscle bound men in speedos show up,
Oh.
and you all take a bath together. It's great. Um,
Sounds very manly.
and you get a speedo. Basically, you're just trying to get more items for points on the cross dressing outfit.
Yeah.
But honestly, every time you always go for the group room just because it's more interesting. um, but yeah, that's that. There's also like the tiara that you can get out of the vending machine. You get cologne from like the mystery shop, depending on what you pick. But the main items you have to get are the wig, the dress, and I forget what the other one is. I think it's actually just the wig and the dress.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, there's like 5 items I think you can get, but for the most part, it's the wig and the dress are important, and there's different grades of like what you can pick for those. Like there's like you literally do a squatting competition at one point to get the wig.
Well, it's a good thing he does squats all the time.
Yeah. Well, he does that because of Zach, because Zach
Yes,
just would
which
do
I
Zach would do squats for no reason.
discovered through playing Crisis Core.
Yeah, doesn't Crisis Core like just explain so much about Seven?
Oh yeah, like it's been really cool going through it. Like I said, I wish I had finished it before we did this, so I'd have little bit more. But I just got to Zach and Cloud getting out of the tank, and now
Oh,
I'm just
okay,
doing a bunch of missions. So
gotcha. So the whole point though of why you do the whole cross-dressing mini game is essentially you have to get Cloud into this like it's essentially it's basically Hugh Hefner of this universe.
yeah,
The Don Cornero, I think his name is, and he's essentially the guy who runs the Honeybee Inn, and he has Tifa in there with him, and you're basically going to rescue her, even though it's later revealed that Tifa's doing reconnaissance and that she's there on purpose. But
yeah,
once you get in, um, there's a humorous little like cutscene where depending on how well you did on the getting the items together, Don Canero will pick one of the 3 girls, and depending on how well you did, Cloud can be chosen as
yeah.
the prettiest one.
So I didn't do any of that extra stuff. So he chose Tifa. So obviously it's Tifa by default if you don't do anything extra. Is there a way for you to get him to pick Aerith, or is
Yes,
that just what do
if
you do there?
so to get him to pick Aerith, you have to get the best wig and the best dress, and then I think you have to like get maybe like 1 or 2 of the side items. It's like there's a whole like if you look it up on GameFAQs, there's actually a whole formula sheet that explains all the different outcomes.
That's
Because
wild.
I've gotten all 3 results, and to be perfectly honest, getting Cloud picked is funny, but it's actually the worst outcome for you because when Cloud gets picked, you don't get put in the side rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't get put in the side rooms, you don't get to fight the enemies, so you miss out on some experience.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's items in those rooms too that you can get that you can't get otherwise.
Oh,
So basically, it all depends on how much you really want to see Cloud get picked.
yeah,
What's always funny to me is you got to imagine how Aerith and Tifa feel that they lost to a dude.
yeah, right. I think
Yeah.
Tifa's more bothered with it than Aerith is, but
Maybe I don't know. Tifa's hard to figure out her personality at times.
yeah.
We do get one of my favorite dialogue scenes here, though, where once they reveal their who they are, they fight. Basically, you interrogate Don Canero, and basically they make threats to they'll either chop them off, rip them off, or as Tifa does, crush them. You can you can fill in the blanks of what they're referring to there, but basically Don Canero reveals that they're gonna drop the plate on top of Sector 7 where the 7th heaven is, and that's bad. that's
Yeah.
really, that a lot of people are gonna die.
To say the least.
And then of course Don Canero pulls his trapdoor and drops you into the sewer after.
Mm.
And another fun fact: there's another relationship points moment here where the party will be separated temporarily, and you can get them back together by like moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
You get the option to talk to Tifa and Aerith here. If you talk to Tifa, you get points with Tifa. If you talk to Aerith, you get points with Aerith.
Okay.
So you can get points for both of them here, or you can ignore one of them and just not talk to them at all, and you lose points, which is fun. So you can just ignore it. You can ignore Aerith there and just talk to Tifa, like I did in my playthrough.
I'm probably gonna do that next time because when I got to the gold saucer, I ended up being Aerith that went on the date. So
the reason you want to do so, I don't think it really matters who you pick. The reason I usually do Tifa is there's more cutscenes that happen with Tifa later on in the game, so I always figure you want to go for that route. Then I think Tifa's considered the canon option anyways, because
Yeah,
we learn more about Aerith later on. So
you end up. It's kind of like choosing Bianca in Dragon Quest V.
yeah,
Yeah.
Or for the Tales fans, it's like picking Colette in Tales of Symphonia. It's like it's just kind of the one that's quote unquote canon.
Yeah.
Although Seven's a bit more ambiguous about it. I think it's just a very heavy implication. Granted, though, I haven't played the remake, so I don't really know what's going on there. But
yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to dive into the remakes until I can scrape together enough cash to buy a PS5. It's hard to do with two kids.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Especially when you're planning on taking one of them on a trip.
Yeah. I mean, family always comes first, so.
Yeah.
But going back to this, so now we get a couple more boss fights happen, and then you eventually get back to Midgar, and they're going to drop the plate, and you essentially have to basically you see all of it's basically Barret and the rest of Avalanche are basically trying to stop them from blowing up the pillar that holds the plate up.
Mm-hmm.
And you can basically, this is a hopeless fight because you're not gonna win, but essentially you climb up the thing and you see all your Avalanche friends die here because they're not important to the story after this.
Right.
And you get to the top, and then I think this is where Aerith gets kidnapped.
I think so.
The plate gets destroyed, and basically they're at a point now where it's just Cloud, Barret, and Tifa again, and you're basically now on a quest. We got to go save Aerith, and apparently Marlene was also kidnapped. I think. Oh no!
She's staying at Aerith's house.
No, this is what happened. Marlene was in Seventh Heaven, and Barret thought she died there, but in reality, she was actually with Elmira, Tifa's mother at the time. She had been saved. So, because I think Tifa has Aerith. Oh, that's how Aerith gets kidnapped, right? She sends Aerith off to go get Marlene, and then once you get to the top of the tower, the helicopter with the Turk shows up and reveals, surprise, we have Aerith.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the next mission is like the final climax of Midgar, and that is the Shinra building.
Yeah, which I feel like that ended up being a pretty long section of the Midgar stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the Shinra building. Did you? So I have to ask, did you go right in the main entrance, or did you go through the side door?
I'm not 100% sure. I think I went to the main entrance.
So did you go right in and fight a bunch of fights, or did you climb up the stairs?
I had to like fumble through a bunch of levels to get up to the top. So I think I just went up right at the front. I don't think I went up the stairs.
Okay. I always ask because the stairs is one of my favorite scenes in the entire game, because it is literally, so if you go in the main entrance, there's a bunch of fights you can do like to get experience, which is probably the more ideal thing. But if you're into the humor aspect and you want to go through the side door, which is like the back entrance, it's essentially just an endless flight of like, well, it's not endless, but it's like just it's like a number of well, it's basically like a fire escape that you climb up, and you keep going up these stairs, and the whole time Barret whines about having to climb the stairs, and Tifa just keeps telling him to shut up. Also, you see how dated this game is because he drops an R word at one point too, which is like, oh, that's not good in today's standards.
Oh, jeez.
But well, no, he doesn't. He doesn't drop the R word. Tifa drops the R word referring to Barret, which is it's funny, but it's not good by today's standards.
Yeah, no kidding.
But one of my favorite points of that is like you get to the like right near the top, and the whole time Tifa's running up front, and eventually she reaches a point where all of a sudden she has this realization that she's running up a flight of stairs in a miniskirt, and she decides she doesn't want to lead anymore, and she has Cloud and Barret go in front. And I always found that to be a really funny inside joke. I'm like, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Literally, the only reason I do the stairs every time is just for the funny dialogue, because it's pretty amusing.
Yeah, and I'm sure you get to a point eventually where it's like, well, I can just grind when I get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do all my grinding in that underground tunnel, anyways, fighting those two guards on the train. So,
Yeah,
but I'm usually pretty well equipped by this point because seven's not a hard game. It's a pretty easy Final Fantasy if you know what you're doing.
yeah. I
Um,
didn't have to. I wasn't fumbling as much as I have with other games. It's pretty straightforward for the most part.
yeah. So the Shinra building is interesting because there's a whole bunch of different levels, and each of the levels has like a different mini game that you can kind of go through. Like you got to go through like the laser, like the guards. Like you basically got to Metal Gear Solid your way through at times, like avoiding guards. There's also this one room where you have to like build this model of Midgar on like a table to clear the room.
Really?
Um, you remember
I
that?
don't remember any of this. I don't know why. I know I had to go through all the different levels individually, but like I don't remember all this stuff.
Mm. It's a quick segment, so you might have just forgotten, honestly.
It's possible.
Um,
I mean, but once I got out of Midgar, I feel like from that point onward was where a lot of my memory lies, is because that's so much of the game.
yeah. I always remember this part though, because the key point here is you get this is where we discover another party member who's one of my favorite party members in the game, Red 13,
Mm-hmm.
who is like this like wolf cat creature. I'm not really sure what he's supposed to be exactly, but he's like a fire elemental kinda, and he's very intelligent, which is interesting when you consider what he is at first.
Well, I mean, even the fact that he can speak alone, I mean,
Yeah.
because he's
What's
supposed to
fun?
be like a monster, isn't he? Like one of the monsters that you find out in the wild.
Kinda. He's like he's like the last of his kind. Kinda his like race is extinct.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is like when you first encounter him, it's when you get to the top and you. This is also where we discover Genova for the first time, and Genova
Mm-hmm.
is interesting. I love the fact that like you look inside the thing and Cloud has a mental breakdown here, one of his many mental breakdowns.
Yeah.
Um, so my favorite moment is after Cloud recovers, Barrett looks at it and his little response is, "Where the fuck's its head?" Like, because it's literally just this weird like torso looking thing,
So
alien looking thing without a head. You find out what happened to the head later on, but
mhm.
uh, that gets disregarded for the moment because eventually we go up to like where Aerith's being kept, and there's like this professor named Professor Hojo who is apparently he's trying to breed Aerith with Red 13 here, which is really fucking weird.
Yeah, I don't understand how the hell that's supposed to work. And I don't really want to either.
The more you learn, I mean, the more you learn about Professor Hojo, the more you realize he was kind of fucked in the head in
Yeah,
a lot of
you want
ways.
to talk about a mad scientist?
Yeah. But you basically you fight a bunch of bosses here. Red 13 joins your party, and then you get kidnapped again. Well, not kidnapped. You get basically put in prison cells, and a little downtime happens here. But eventually, you wake up and the cell doors are unlocked, and there's a mysterious trail of blood all over the place.
So much blood.
And you follow it back, and then you see that the tank that's holding Genova is ripped open, and she's gone. And it's implied that Sephiroth was here. And for those who don't know, Sephiroth is um, probably the strongest member of Soldier there ever was, and he is the game's big bad in a lot of ways.
Yes. At
And
the very
eventually,
least, he's the main antagonist.
yeah. And you follow the trail of blood, and we get to the top where you find President Shinra, who is stabbed in the back with Sephiroth's sword. And basically, the guy that they've been after this entire time is now dead, and he's been replaced by his son Rufus, who
Yes.
Rufus is a fun character because he's not completely a villain, but he's also not a good guy either.
No.
And basically, you fight him, and then you escape Shinra on a bike minigame, which is one of my favorite minigames, mostly for the soundtrack.
I really love this part. That's honestly one of the things about Final Fantasy VII that I found myself really enjoying is out of all the JRPGs and games like them that I've played, like the kind of mini games that they add throughout the game for the story, things like the motorcycle and there was like the kind of like tower defense kind of mini games later on.
Fort Condor.
Yeah, like stuff like that. It's just it's interesting to kind of throw in little things like that every now and then just to change it up, you know.
Random snowboarding mini game later on.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the parade one, but I mean that was just a, you know,
the parade one's pretty bad, but nothing is worse than the fucking CPR mini game.
CPR. I don't know if I remember that one.
You know when you get to Junon the first time, and there's the little girl with the dolphin who's like drowns, and you have to give her CPR to save her life.
Oh right.
You have to do a fucking CPR mini game, and it's fucking trash. I hate that mini game so much.
I must have blocked it out.
Yeah, it's not good. There's also the dolphin mini game where you got to like launch Cloud with the dolphin in the air, and it's Junon's a joy. That's all I can say.
Is that where Tifa learned the dolphin blow?
Maybe, maybe so. Oh, we forgot about the bitch slap mini game.
Oh,
wait, you remember when you play as Tifa and you literally get into a bitch slap fight on top of the Junon?
Oh yeah, that's right. With that, the chick, she was one of the Turks, wasn't she?
Scarlet, I think.
Oh right, she was one of the board members of Shinra.
Yeah. One of the irredeemable. Basically, all the Shinra board members, with the exception of a certain one that we'll get into later, are all irredeemable pieces of shit because they're basically supposed to be like greedy corporate bigwigs, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's literally a point in the game where Tifa gets. There's a point in the game later on where Cloud's missing, and like you're playing as Tifa as the main character for a bit, and you're in like this poison you're in like a chair in like this room that's slowly being filled with poison gas, and you have to like escape the chair, and then you literally get into a bitch slap fight on the Junon cannon, and it is one of the most hilarious points, and I honestly hope they replicate it for the remake, just because I want to see what they do for that.
Oh man, I didn't even think of that. There's so many scenes when you actually like think about a lot of the different things that happen throughout the game. Like, there's so many scenes I would like to see in that remake style, like fully voice acted and everything.
I'm not going to recap the rest of the game point for point. I did want to bring up a certain points though. Like we had mentioned the gold saucer earlier on. The gold saucer is one of the most entertaining parts of this game because it's basically a giant carnival in the sky kind of thing.
Yeah.
With one of the catchiest songs in the entire game. And this is where Chocobo racing happens. And Chocobo racing, you're either going to love Chocobo racing or you're going to hate Chocobo racing because it is very important to the game later on.
I was so sick of it.
I mean, it's worth doing, but
God. I mean, I had to do that to get Knights of the Round.
Yep. But another thing about the gold saucers, we mentioned the date that happens later on, and my favorite part of the date is there is literally a point where there's like a play going on, and you basically have to like do the play with the characters, and it's one of those things where you're supposed to screw it up because it's just funny that way.
Yeah.
And my favorite is when you're playing when you have Tifa as the partner for this segment. There's a point where like a dragon shows up and it has like the princess in its arms, and the princess is about to kiss Cloud, and Tifa just like kicks them both off frame. She's like, "Get out of here!" And it's like, it's pretty good.
Awesome.
What's funny though is if you get Barrett for that scene, they literally walk in and then the award goes off for they won the award to be in the play, and then they look at Barrett and Cloud and go, "Oh, we're not into that kind of relationship," and they just send him away. And it's like,
that didn't age well.
Yeah, I'm like, at the time that was probably funny, but I'm playing it now and I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's points where you realize this game was made in 96 and was made in Japan, and Japan is like 40 years behind on a lot of things. So
yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, I just always remember that's probably not something they're going to keep for the remake.
Probably not.
I hope they keep the play though, because the play is hilarious.
Oh, I'm sure they would.
And then there's the Ferris wheel scene, and my favorite part about the Ferris wheel scene is it's completely different for every character.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogue is different, but the best one is for Cloud and Barrett, because they literally just sit there with Barrett's theme playing in the background and don't say a word. It's like, this is so awkward.
That's awesome.
I guess we should probably talk about some of the other party members that we get later on. Obviously, we talked about Red 13. Red 13 has probably got my favorite backstory out of all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because you learn about his tribe at the Cosmo Canyon, and you find out how he like resents his father until you find out his father actually saved the entire village at the expense of his own life.
Yeah. Maybe
Which is
they turned to stone or something.
Yeah, he's up on that hill like forever, like basically memorialized, and it's like it's a really sad scene, and you really feel bad for like Red 13 there.
Mm-hmm.
Whose actual name is like Naniki, I think. Because Red 13 is just the name he was given by Hojo because he was the 13th experiment.
Yeah.
But going through that, there's also I'm trying to think of another. Oh yeah, so then we also get Sid, because every Final Fantasy has a Sid.
Yeah.
And Sid is both one of my favorites and one of the most problematic characters in this game.
Oh yeah, because he did like a is
He's
it
kind
an
of
abuser or something?
he's like a wife beater,
Yeah.
because they're technically, I don't know what his relationship with her is during the game, but he's just like an asshole. Like when you first meet him, you find out later why, and they sort of fix it, but at first he comes off as such an ass playing the game.
Also, do you find it weird that he uses a spear? He doesn't look like a guy who would be using a spear. Like he looks like the guy who would be using guns or something.
So he's supposed to be like a pilot. He's like, it's weird. He's like the dragoon of this game,
Mm-hmm.
which are like the jumping like spear characters from older Final Fantasies. It is weird though that Sid of all characters has the spear.
Yeah, it's just I find it odd. I don't know why of all characters he would. I feel like if anything, you'd give like a spear type weapon to Aerith, which she gets staffs or something, doesn't she? Like bow staff.
She has staffs. Yeah, she has. I guess if they wanted to weapon variety, because there is a character that uses guns later on. The other secret character of this game, who isn't unlocking Vincent the most cryptic bullshit ever.
I didn't even realize that he existed until honestly, I didn't even get him or Yuffie until I was already in endgame stuff. So I really didn't do any of their stuff. I didn't do any of their side quests or get any of their stuff. I just never. By that point, I was too far in.
Gotcha. Yeah, because getting Vincent, you have to like do this weird code thing and fight this boss, and then you find him in the basement of Shinra Manor in a coffin, and you have to like say the right dialogue options to get him.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cryptic thing. I mean, and he's not even really worth it either, because he's okay, but like he's not the best party member.
Yeah. Well, still, just because I feel like I got them so late last time around, I think I'll probably throw them on my party next time, just so I can get their side stories and all that other stuff.
Yeah, because Vincent's side story in particular is probably the deepest out of all the characters, because he, to the point where it got its own game, Dirge of Service later on.
What was that on?
PlayStation 2.
Oh, really? I hope they end up re-releasing it for Switch at some point, because I wouldn't mind playing it. It's an FPS, isn't it?
It's a third-person shooter. It's not very good.
Oh, really? That's a bummer.
Yeah, it's not very good at all. Yeah, Vincent's backstory is weird though. Like it's revealed like he was a Turk originally, and he fell in love with this scientist that worked for Shinra, who also worked with Professor Hojo, and that scientist is later revealed to be the mother of Sephiroth. But
his actual mother.
Yeah, his the actual woman that gave birth to him, but it's complicated. Sephiroth's existence.
Yeah.
So how many of the Fort Condor missions did you actually do?
Not many. Honestly, I did that first one. Like when he first asks you I did that, and I think I might have done it one or two times more after that, but I didn't really do it much.
I know you only have to do it twice. Like there's the first one, and then there's the required one later on that you do to get the big materia from.
Oh right, then yeah, I probably did it twice then.
See, that one you don't actually have to do. You just have to basically get to let the boss go to you, and then you just fight the boss, and you win regardless. But you can do the actual like mini game if you want, because it's kind of fun, but it's one of those things that takes so freaking long.
Yeah, it's like a tactics mini game, kind of like Halo Wars and stuff was like that. Kind of tactic.
It's RTS kind of or strategy. I think it's the reason why
like
I don't
tower defense game maybe.
Yeah. Honestly, the reason why I didn't, because you get good rewards for doing those. The only reason I don't ever do it is because you have to go back to Fort Condor to actually do them, and usually you're on the other side of the freaking map before you can actually do it.
Yeah. Well, eventually you get the airship, so that makes it a lot easier to get around and do stuff like that.
Once you get the high wind, like the map basically opens up to just doing everything. Like, because the only method of transportation better than the high wind is the golden chocobo, which you get by breeding chocobos.
Some grueling ass shit, I tell you.
So
that was the point where I got really fed up with the chocobo races, because I was just trying to get that gold chocobo so I could get Knights of the Round.
You know, there's another way to get the gold chocobo, right?
Oh, I'm sure there is, but
you have to beat Ruby and Sapphire Weapon.
Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen.
Oh no, Ruby and Emerald Weapon.
Yeah, I tried to fight it even after I like got all the way, even after I beat the game, and then I went back and just started like fucking around here and there. I tried to fight Emerald Weapon and I got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, the way you beat those is you use Knights of the Round, so it's kind of like it's kind of counterintuitive, because like basically the whole reason you'd beat them is to get the golden chocobo, but you probably already have it because you wanted Knights of the Round. You need Knights of the Round to beat them, really.
Yeah, and isn't there ways like there's things that you can equip where you can use Knights of the Round like multiple times in a turn or something?
So I forget whether, I feel like I did this back in the day, but for some reason I feel like they don't actually let you do multicast on Knights of the Round, because I think that would break the game.
I think it works if you do like magic counter materia or something like that. You can have it set to that specific one.
Maybe. I know I did a thing once where like I literally like the entire fight literally took like half an hour because it just was casting Knights of the Round the whole time.
It is a really long animation, but it's definitely worth it to get the damage.
I think the only animation that's longer than Knights of the Round is Sephiroth's like weird like power that he has in the final boss. That the one that destroys the entire solar system.
Yeah, no kidding. I gotta say, one weird thing that I found, like, was there ever like a definitive end in Final Fantasy VII? Because I feel like I beat the game and it's like, well, the meteor is still coming to Earth. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it wasn't really definitive with the way it ended.
It's a very ambiguous ending. Basically, from what I gather, well, I mean, Advent Children kind of confirms that the meteor was stopped, but the way the game initially ended was basically like Holy gets cast from the planet, and it basically stops the meteor.
Okay.
At the expense of Midgar getting destroyed, but no real loss. No loss there.
Yeah, there was a lot of bullshit there anyway. Hopefully, they at least evacuated people.
You hope. I somehow doubt it, but basically, Midgar Holy gets cast, and it's revealed that they all survived in the crater because like they launched the high wind out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just ambiguously ends there, because it ends with that cutscene in the future of like Red 13 and his like kids like just kind of going across that open field, and you see Midgar in the background is like completely overgrown, like nature's reclaimed it.
How did he have kids if he's the last of his kind?
They never explained that. I don't think they ever will.
Oh, maybe they captured some Shinra scientists and said, "Clone me."
It's one of those things that you just don't think about.
Just accept it, or maybe he succeeded in breedings with somebody. Who knows? Maybe Hojo was onto something.
Yeah. Also, did you so you remember Costa del Sol, like after the ship scene where you end up on this like beach resort town?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you buy the villa, or did you not buy the villa?
I don't think I did.
So there's a little like villa that you can buy that's just it's literally a complete waste of money. There's no reason to buy this thing, but you
Mhm.
basically you buy a house and you can just go in the house and that's it.
That's there's no like pro to buying it. It's just you have a house.
Yeah, it's a thing you do once you like have all this money and you have basically nothing left to do with it. You buy the villa and you're like, this was a waste of money.
Fair enough.
I love that town though because like, you can go on the beach and Hojo's just chilling there on a fucking beach chair,
Yeah,
fucking
I thought that was weird.
with a bunch of babes, and it's like what? It's like okay, sure, why not?
Yeah, I did definitely find that a little off-putting when I was playing it the first time. Because you're in the middle of like, it was like I think it was right around the time when Cloud was telling his big backstory, which ended up being bullshit anyway.
Oh
Um,
yeah, oh yeah, that the flashback to the Nibelheim incident. That is one of the longest cutscenes in the fucking game.
yeah, and I imagine that because where I am in Crisis Core was like towards the end of the Nibelheim flashback.
Hmm.
Um, I'm guessing the rest of the flashback is pretty much what the rest of the game is. I mean, obviously, I haven't beat it yet, so I don't know. But I mean,
Um,
unless they expand on it a little bit more.
they expand on a few things because there's other characters in Crisis Core like Genesis. Um,
Yeah, and Angeal.
and well, yeah, both of them. Angel's not really as big a factor though. Genesis is the real major factor in the Nibelheim incident, but I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't got to there yet.
Well, I mean, I've like Nibelheim's already ashes at this point.
Oh, okay, so you saw the Genesis, the one that caused the Nibelheim incident, then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, so you already got past the point where Angeal died too, right?
Uh, kind of. It's confusing with all the clones
Oh yeah, I forgot about the
because
cloning.
I killed him,
I forgot about the cloning
but
bullshit. That's right.
yeah,
Oh
I
my
killed
god.
Genesis too.
I forgot about the cloning bull. I forgot he comes back as a clone.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII. It's like the gameplay itself and going along the story is very accessible and easy to get into, but the story itself is so fucking convoluted.
Yeah, and it's not even as convoluted as eights, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to. Oh yeah, so the Genova. Oh yeah, we should probably talk about the most iconic part of this game and Aerith's death.
Mm-hmm.
You see it coming, but like at the same time, you're like, it's still you're like, huh.
Yeah, I did kind of like. I mean, I knew, like I said, I knew it was going to happen just from osmosis. You know, I'd hear people talking about it and stuff. I think especially when the remake game came out and everyone was talking about Final Fantasy VII again. Um, that was when I had first heard that that was the thing that happened. So even like going in the first time, I knew it was coming, but I just didn't know what form it was going to take.
You know the saddest part too about Aerith's death.
Was that?
They always say it was Sephiroth that killed her, but it was actually just a Genova clone.
Huh.
So you know how like you fight Genova throughout the game, like at these different points.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not explained very well, but so we should have put a big spoiler warning, but at this point, I think people already got it. But
Well, I think after the last episode, people kind of have an idea of like we're going into the stories here.
yeah. So the basically one of the biggest misconceptions in this game that a lot of people miss is when Sephiroth first appears early in the game and kills the President Shinra. That's not actually Sephiroth. That's actually Genova broke out of the chamber and she's
Mm-hmm.
taking the form of Sephiroth because Sephiroth is controlling her via wherever he is at the time. And basically, that Genova, the Genova torso is going around, uh, basically masquerading as Sephiroth, and it will
Mm-hmm.
leave behind a piece of itself, and that's where you fight like Genova Life, Genova Death, Genova Birth, whatever the different Genova incarnations. But the version of the version of Sephiroth that kills Aerith is actually just a Jenova clone.
That's so confusing. So it's like it's Sephiroth, but it's not Sephiroth, but it is Sephiroth. Like,
Well, it's because Sephiroth's controlling it, but it's not actually Sephiroth. It's confusing.
yeah.
Also, Genova's one line in the game is a typo.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So after you defeat Genova Life during the after Aerith dies, that you fight that boss fight, the line of dialogue comes up on the screen by Genova, and it infamously says, "Because you are a puppet."
What is it?
It's supposed to say because you are a puppet, but they mistranslated it and it is because. I love that that one.
That's just silly. I love like old like mistranslations and stuff like that. Just I don't know, it adds a level of charm to these older games.
Well, that's like my favorite part about like the stupid dialogue is like you get the scenes with Sid at his like in Rocket Town where like he's in his house and he's like sit down and drink your goddamn tea. It's like okay.
I was like, geez.
Oh, what did you? So I always ask people like this because the scene is like the biggest what the fuck moment in the game. The scene where Kate Sith is does his heroic sacrifice in the temple that shrinks when you get the black materia.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of like there's this big emotional scene where Kate Sith's like, "Don't worry, I'll save you all by being the sacrifice here." And then right after he dies, another one just appears, and it's like,
yeah, it's like, "Hey guys, what's up? What did I miss?" Like,
yeah, I mean, at that point too, I don't think it was revealed that Kate Sith was Reeve yet. Because for those who don't know, Reeve was one of the board members in the Shinra building, basically the only one that was decent.
The only one who was saying, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't destroy 2 sections of the city."
Yeah, the one who was actually like who wasn't evil. He's actually secretly in control of Kate Sith the entire game, which is you don't find out right away. You'll figure it out through clues as it goes on.
Yeah, he's not the subtlest.
No. Kate Sith is very I never use Kate Sith in battles, so
I tried him a couple times and it just wasn't for me.
no, he's never in my party. Yeah, I'm trying to think any other. Oh yeah, we should talk about Cloud going crazy. That's
Oh yeah, well, I mean it's kind of important.
so later on in the game, eventually we get to the point where Sephiroth's actual body gets discovered. Like, because during the Nibelheim incident, it's revealed that it was revealed Sephiroth apparently died in the reactor. How he died isn't explained initially because it's the whole Nibelheim incident is kind of a fabrication from Cloud's mind.
Yes, it's his trauma coming out.
Yeah. So when we find Sephiroth later on, he's basically in this he's basically down in the center of the earth, like the life stream basically, because the planet has like this life force in it. It's kind of meta.
It's basically like a vein pumping pure Mako energy, which is what materia is made out of.
Yeah, and it's what Shinra uses to power the planet, even though it's killing the planet at the same time.
Yeah, which isn't that where weapons come from too? The weapon monsters. It's like the planet's like natural defense to that.
Yes, that's exactly what the weapons are actually.
They're basically antibodies.
Because this is the cutscene where the weapons get deployed. Because Cloud basically has like this traumatic brain moment where he all of a sudden beats up Aerith and then like steals the black materia and gives it to Sephiroth.
Yeah, because he's being controlled, right?
Well, he beat up Aerith way before this. I forgot there's actually like a shit ton of game in between that. But eventually Cloud takes the black materia and because he has Genova cells in him because of the experiments that happened to him during the point where he was captured by Hojo after the Nibelheim incident.
Right.
He's being controlled by Sephiroth, and he essentially gives Sephiroth the black materia and then proceeds to fall down into the life stream. And we don't find Cloud again until we visit this one village, and Cloud is just in not like in like a comatose state, basically, like just kind of. He basically he's a vegetable at this point.
Yeah, he's just the lights are on, but nobody's home.
Yep, and because of this, Tifa is so because at this point Tifa was the main character you were playing as. Tifa's so distraught by this, she decides to stay with Cloud and keep an eye on him, and you get to play as Sid after this as the main character. And Sid, I always laugh because the point where you play as Sid is like one of the most productive parts of the game.
Oh yeah, because that's when you get all like the big materia, right?
Yeah, you get at least 2 of them, I think, because there's 4 total, I want to say. And this is where we get at least 2 of them, and it's like this really productive moment. And then eventually you go back to Cloud, and that entire village basically like sinks into the life stream because of an earthquake, because of one of the weapons I think coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always love that cutscene because it's one of those cutscenes that's CGI, but it uses the weird deformed models for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I love the scene because it's Tifa pushing Cloud on a wheelchair, and Cloud just has this like thousand-eyed dead stare the whole time.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they proceed to fall into the live stream. And then this is kind of where like basically the big plot dump of the game happens, where essentially like you're playing as Tifa here, and there's like a bunch of clouds all over the place, and there's like this giant cloud in the center that's like basically just having a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And you talk to all the different clouds, and it actually reveals what really happened during the Nibelheim incident. And it explains who Zack was and how Cloud was actually just a random grunt that was there, because Cloud
it was the member of Soldier. He was just a soldier.
Yeah, he was in Shinra, but he was too weak to become a soldier. Because Cloud's backstory, he was pretty weak. He wasn't actually really that strong of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the whole, yeah. But the whole turning point is during the whole Nibelheim incident. The fun fact, he's actually the guard that keeps Tifa from going inside the reactor.
Mm-hmm.
Which I always thought was a funny little meta joke.
Yeah.
But it's revealed that Cloud actually is the one that beats Sephiroth in the end.
Yeah, didn't he stab him through with his own sword?
He stabbed him with the Buster Sword through, so like a mega sword.
Yeah.
And Cloud was actually mortally wounded here with the fight, but he still ended up beating Sephiroth in the process.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how Hojo kidnapped him and did all the experiments, him and Zack. But it's revealed that like basically you find out that the whole time Cloud's throughout the whole first half of the game, Cloud has basically, because he got Mako poisoning through that event, his brain was completely scrambled.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically came back to just as Zack died. And Zack made the comment to him that he was going to be his living legacy, which basically basically the implication is the idea of who Zack was basically implanted over Cloud's subconscious, and Cloud kind of became this weird hybrid of Zack and himself.
Yeah, and it was because Zack was telling him stories all the time, right?
Yeah, because you find if you actually go back and you get Zack's full backstory, you'll find out that Zack was basically, he took Cloud under his wing, and he was telling him during the whole point where Cloud was going through his Mako coma, Zack was just telling him all these stories, talking about Aerith, all these different things. And that's kind of how it's why Cloud is the way he is during the first half of the game.
Yeah.
But eventually Cloud's memories all get perfectly realigned, and we get the original Cloud back, and he returns to the party. And this is where you find out that Cloud's kind of a goofball.
Yeah. Let's mosey.
Let's mosey. Like, I love that line. Oh yeah, speaking of the original the Nibelheim flashback, because you do play that a little bit, and you actually have to there is some stuff that you can do in that flashback that affects later on. Like that's how you get Tifa's level 4 limit break.
Yeah.
You can also steal her underwear.
Oh. How many opportunities is this game to give you to steal underwear?
This is the only time you steal it, because you could give it. You get it given to you in the Honeybee Inn, but because you go into Tifa's bedroom and you can literally examine the drawers and you can steal her underwear. It's like
Jesus.
Don't do that though, because it gives negative points with Tifa. So, but it's a thing you can do. I discovered that by accident. I was like, what happens if you click around here? And it's like, oh, way to go, Cloud.
Yeah, definitely. Next time I play the game, I'm gonna have to, pull up some guides and hit up a bunch of the stuff that I missed, because I definitely, even how straightforward the game is, there's definitely a bunch of stuff that I just passed over without realizing it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Before we move on to 8, though, we should probably talk about the soundtrack a little.
The soundtrack is. I haven't played the game except for like a couple of occasions in like 2 years, but I still have like the overworld theme and like the battle theme just like imprinted into my brain.
I mean, Aerith's theme in general, like the piano ballad that plays when especially because it's the song that plays during the Genova Life fight, where it's just the Aerith's theme and it's really sad, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
There's that one. Every character has a theme, which is really cool. I love when RPGs do that. Cloud's theme is technically the overworld theme, but it works for Cloud, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, of course, the final boss theme, One Wing Angel, is iconic at this point.
Yeah, is that the one with the Sephiroth chant?
Yeah, the Latin chanting.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is, I could get down with a good Latin chant song. Like whenever they do it, like Death Note or Full Metal, it's like, I don't know why it gets me pumped.
I love the scene in Crisis Core where you get the little like scene of Genesis. It's like a cutscene of Genesis, Angeal, and Sephiroth chilling on the Junin cannon.
Yeah.
And they get into like a sparring fight, and when Sephiroth starts fighting, the One Wing Angel starts playing, and it's like what is this? But it's amazing.
Well, with that flashback, I thought that was so weird because like Sephiroth's talking about it like they were like all best buddies, like they were like a little crew that always hung out and stuff. And it goes into the flashback like it's gonna be like him reminiscing and stuff, but it's just you don't get the sense that they're friends from that flashback at all.
Yeah, because Genesis kind of just comes off as a prick the whole time.
Yeah, he's just got this huge chip on his shoulder because Sephiroth is better than him.
Yeah,
but, like I don't know, it's just stupid.
That's the weirdest part about Crisis Core to me is like Sephiroth is like actually a pretty nice, like decent character up until he goes insane.
Yeah, it really humanizes him a lot. And
yeah,
you're going.
It's just weird because it's like the whole time you're like, wow, he's actually a pretty decent guy, and then he goes nuts, and you're like, no, he's evil.
Yep, pretty much.
He's also voiced by George Newbern, which is really funny to me.
Who's that?
Superman.
Oh, really?
In the Justice League cartoon.
No kidding. That's hilarious. I didn't even notice.
So one of the DC animated the little like side thing here, but one of the DC animated movies that you can find on like Max, it's Superman versus the Elite. George Newbern did the voice for that one, and there's a point where like Superman like pretends to be evil for like this one point, and he just straight up does the Sephiroth voice, and I'm like, this is so weird.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Moving on to Final Fantasy VIII though now. There is so much to say about 8.
Yeah.
I guess we should probably just get right into the battle system and how the battle system is one of the most confusing things in Final Fantasy.
It is so convoluted. It is the most complicated like magic battle stat gain system I've ever played on any game.
The thing about it though is once you figure it out, it is really fucking cool to like mess around with.
Yeah, once you know what you're doing, it's super easy to break the system and just be outrageously over. As soon as I figured out how to make it work, I was just dominating everything.
Once you figure out how to break this damn thing in half, it is hilarious how much you can mess with this game. But to explain it basically, unlike most traditional RPGs, experience points don't really matter in this game so much because you don't gain abilities via experience anymore. The way levels work in this game is enemies scale with your level. So basically, it's just kind of a way to mark your difficulty level, essentially.
Yeah.
Instead, the combat system uses this system called the junction system, where rather than learning spells naturally, you actually have to draw them out of enemies on the screen. And basically, you'll enter a fight and you get the option to, you have like a bunch of commands you can set. Like there's attack, item, summon. Well, it's GF, but it's basically summons, and draw. I think there's like 5 options, and you can only have. Oh yeah, and items.
Yeah,
I usually leave items behind, but
I think there was another option or two. I don't remember.
I'm trying to remember. There's like 5 options, but you can only have 4 equipped at once.
And I think there were like special ones depending on which GFs you have. Like they would have different commands that you could equip.
Yeah. But you always want to have draw because you can draw magic. Oh no, that's what it is. It's attack, GF, magic, draw, and items. Items usually gets left behind for me, or GF occasionally, because some of the summons are kind of useless. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and sometimes, like every now and then, I would just drop the magic one because a lot of times, like if you need a spell, you could just draw it. Like
yeah,
cure was a common one. You'd see that one all over the place.
I'd have one character that would basically whoever my healer was going to be. They would have the magic stat, but every other character I'd just have like draw or items, I guess. But yeah, the way it works is you draw your magic from enemies. Every enemy has different abilities that you can pick from, like say fire, water, ice, cure, like all the different magics, and you can basically draw up until 99 stocks of each.
I thought it was 100.
Oh, it might be 100. Usually games end with 99. It might be 100 for this one. But the reason, so basically what you want to do is you want to draw magic because you then use your magic and you can equip it to different skill attributes that you get via your GFs, which are the summons, or I guess guardian forces as they're called in this game.
Yeah.
And depending on what magical like a spell you equip to different stats, you get different bonuses. So like with the right combinations, you can make like Squall or whichever character you're playing as freaking unstoppable, like with just a few spells.
It was so hard to figure out like how, because each GF affects different stats. So figuring out like which combinations of GFs to equip to which characters so that you could and then making sure you had the right magics to pair up with the different stats that you want to boost. I had to do a lot of Googling when I was playing that game.
So I have the official strategy guide for 8, and it is very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Especially finding GFs, because some of the GFs are completely random how you find them.
Yeah, well, luckily it gives you the opportunity to get them right before like the final confrontation at the end.
Some of them you lose forever though if you're not careful. Like there's a point where one of the first bosses is you're fighting up on top of that radio tower early in the game. The enemy that appears there is actually a GF that you can get, I believe.
Yeah, because you have to draw some of them from your enemies.
Yes, because I know like there's one of the main not main antagonist, but one of the antagonists of the game, Cypher, his little posse that he has, one of them has a GF that you can get by drawing it. Some of them you just find on the overworld, others you get out of magic lamps.
Yeah, that was a funny one.
I love getting, so early in the game you get given, after you become a seed, which is the military, because this game is weird. You're in like a military like school / force, and you get like a pay grade, like, and you get paid, like you get essentially a like weekly check.
Yeah,
the way the game works, it's an interesting system. Like everything about 8 is weird.
It's like Seed is basically to 8 what Soldier is to 7, only instead of working for a corrupt corporation, you're working for a school.
Yeah, who is also kind of corrupt, but for different reasons.
Yeah, but this Sid is cool, so
I call this Sid Robin Williams Sid. He looks like Robin Williams.
Now that you say it, I don't think I'll ever be able to unsee it.
It got that someone said that to me, and I immediately was like, Holy shit, you're right. And I cannot unsee it.
That's too funny.
But yeah, so the the reason why this game gets kind of a weird rap in terms of its battle system is because of how the the junction system is structured. You don't really want to fight any random fights because there's no reason to level up because leveling up raises the level of the enemies on the field. So basically, you spend the first half, most of the early game, running from battles. Basically, you run in, draw the magic, run away. That's how you fight battles. You can fight bosses because bosses don't give experience points; they give um, GP Guardian points, which levels up your Guardian forces. Which that's fine. You just don't want to level
Right.
up your you don't want to level up your characters.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the junction system. It's once you figure it out, it's pretty fun, but my god, figuring it out is a pain.
Yeah, going through the process of actually like mapping out how it all works and what the best combinations are, like that's easily one of the biggest headaches I have with this game. But once I figured it out, I was just flying through it.
Yeah, like once you figure it, it's actually really fun. Like it's a really cool system that I feel like was just really poorly executed at the time.
Yeah, they definitely could have done a better job explaining it.
It's actually funny because this was my first RPG. It actually kind of desensitized me to like complicated battle systems. So like I any like time I play an RPG with a complicated combat system, it never bothers me because I'm just so used to it at this point.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world to be immune to.
Yeah. Another thing though about this game and its like combat system is you don't buy weapons. Every character has their main weapon all throughout the entire game. Instead, you upgrade them, and upgrading the weapons is a pain in the ass. I will say.
That was one thing I never really got the hang of because like I don't know, I just couldn't be bothered to try and find the items that I needed to upgrade them.
You needed to find items, and you also had to find magazines that were like hidden throughout the game.
Yeah, see, I just didn't have time for that.
Yeah, so like I never upgraded the weapons really that far. What's interesting about the combat system though is this game actually introduces a. It's kind of like if you've ever played, excuse me, if you've ever played like Mario RPG or any of the Mario RPGs, where it's a contact sensitive like attack feature, where like if you hit I think it's like the R trigger at a certain point with when Squall attacks, it does
Oh
more
yeah,
damage.
the gun blade.
Yeah, the gun, the dumbest
Yeah.
sword ever. Um, Squalls, I'll give credit. Squalls is kind of entertaining because it's essentially a revolver with a big, massive bayonet on it on the end.
I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, after watching Ruby, I'm always a big fan of seeing guns and swords put together.
So Squalls is pretty cool. Like I'm okay with Squalls. Cypher's gunblade looks stupid though.
Yeah, I think it's
'Cause
kind of weird they had him with a gun blade too.
Well, his is dumb because it's a blade, but then it has like a pistol on the end, and you hold it like you're like holding it like this with the blade going this way, and it's like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's all. I feel like that would be way too easy to like fuck yourself up with.
Yeah, Squalls is at least kind of interesting because the way they stylized it, it's still goofy and it's the most Final Fantasy thing ever. But yeah,
Does Final Fantasy ever do anything goofier than that for for like a main character's weapon?
um, Lightning in Final Fantasy 13 has like a gun whip blade thing, so
Oh.
that's kind of fun. There's also the final boss of Dirge of Cerberus has two gun blade like these two like gun pistol blade things that he fights with.
Hmm.
Gunblades are very common in Final Fantasy lore.
Oh. I'm still pretty much a noob at this point. The only ones I've played so far are 7, 8. Then I played the first one, and now I'm playing Crisis Core. So I still have a ways to go before I get caught up on all that.
I mean, you can't not talk about Seven and the Buster Sword, the friggin' most ridiculous weapon of all time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Going back though, so I guess we should talk about the characters of 8 a little bit, and they're probably the most controversial part of 8 in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see that.
To be honest, I think Squall gets way too much hate. Like, I don't understand like why people act like he's this terrible character. Because
I mean, in the beginning, I mean, it was kind of like the same thing with Cloud in the beginning because they were both very like standoffish, like loner types. Like they didn't really want to get close to people or whatever. But like, I mean, Squall came around eventually. But I mean, you remember I was texting you like, "Hey, Squall's kind of an asshole." Like,
so the thing with Squall is like he's basically just like an emo kid, basically.
yeah.
And his whole because he's actually got his inner thoughts are pretty actually like deep, to be honest. Like he doesn't say what he's actually thinking a lot, but you'll actually see his like thoughts every now and then.
Mhm.
And he's got some deep character moments. Like he does care. I just don't think he knows how to care. I think that's like kind of the point.
Yeah, I don't know if like there's a relationship system or whatever in eight that affects the story. No.
No, I mean, you look at the cover of eight; it's very clear who the main couple of this game is.
Yeah, I was just curious because like at the with the way that Squall was in the beginning, how he was just kind of being a dick for no reason. I kind of leaned into that. Like whenever there was a dialogue option, I would always choose the asshole option just because it fit
See,
him better.
my favorite Cloud answers for everything were either ellipses or whatever.
Whatever is always a solid choice.
I love the ellipses though, because the ellipses is kind of like you're not even going to dignify them with a response. You're just going to just stare at them and not say anything.
God, that reminds me of I don't think I've picked it up in a while, but when I was playing the Walking Dead Telltale game, when I was just doing a whole run where I just had Lee never say anything.
Oh yeah, the mute run. Well, that and I have to figure out how to lower the car or whatever that scene was.
Yeah.
Poor
It's
Cindy,
too
she
funny.
just did not understand.
Then she gets stuck on the stairs too. It's funny as hell.
Caroline.
It's too funny.
Yeah,
But
we'll have to do an episode talking about that game at some point because
yeah, at least that first one, because I never got into any of the later ones. I do eventually want to go through them all and like actually experience the whole story because it is like an ongoing like it's pretty much a serial, but it's a game.
yeah, it's it's basically a point and click adventure game series, basically.
Yeah, which I'm honestly like games like that, like with like the whole concept of point and click adventures, but like with the graphics and voice acting of modern day gaming, like I feel like they should do more stuff like that. Like Telltale was like the only ones really messing around with that.
Yeah, and they went too far with it, and that's why they're out of business now.
Yeah, which kind of sucks, but that's what happens when you lean too far into one side. You got to take risks time and time again.
It's what happens when you start like 100 projects at once and only like 2 of them sell.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but going back to 8, some of the other characters are actually really fun. Like I love Zell. Like Zell's one of my favorite party members in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of hate for Zell, and I don't get it. Well, first of all, I mean, you know me, I like a brawler. I always I always had him on my team because I like having the brawler on my team.
He's such a goofy bastard too. Like his entire gimmick is he loves hot dogs and he's always late to get the hot dogs when they sell out.
Yeah.
You
I
can
just
also
like the idea of like a goofball with a face tattoo. Like, like what's the story there?
and you can go visit his house and he's like, don't go in my room. It's my room. He's fun. There's also Selfie, who is the transfer student from the other garden, because the schools are known as gardens in this series.
Yeah.
Selfie's fun too. She's the bubbly one.
She's all right.
She likes trains. She really likes trains.
She wasn't my favorite in the game.
I didn't mind her. There's also Quistis, the teacher who joins your party after she loses her teaching license.
Yeah, she's like a teacher, but she's also a peer, but she's also like kind of into Squall. At least that was the impression I got.
Yeah, that's implied. Squall is like anti-romance for most of the game
until he meets
Renoa. Yeah. Well, even when he meets Renoa, he's not really into her.
Yeah, I still chose the asshole dialogue options for her too.
So you got a lot of meanies in response.
Yeah.
Good old Renoa. Fun fact about Renoa, she suffered from a poor translation as well. the reason why Renoa is so disliked in the US is because the thing with Renoa was when the artist for the game who designed the characters, he didn't want to do another Tifa and create a character that was like over the top beautiful.
Mhm.
He instead wanted to create a character that was more on the cute side, and kind of like a flirty kind of cute character.
Yeah.
The problem is when she was translated into English, they kind of lost the whole like cute aspect of it, and they just kind of made her like a spoiled brat.
Yeah.
And she comes off as that in the English translation, which really hurts her character in a lot of ways because she comes
But
off as annoying a lot.
I feel like it's really hard to translate what Japan considers cute for a girl.
Yeah,
Because I don't know if this is like a weird take, but to me it seems like every time Japan tries to do cute girl, it always ends up kind of coming off as little girl. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm not into that. So
yeah.
and I feel like a lot of people in America probably feel the same way. So I don't know how they would translate that in a way that would make it likable anyway.
I assume that's why Renoa comes off as spoiled brat.
I'd rather spoiled brat, honestly.
I mean, she gets better as the game goes on. I mean, even at the start, I kind of like her arc with where she's the leader of the rebels in the because this game's plot is essentially it's like a world at war kind of where like there's uh the different like countries, I guess, and all kind of they're all kind of at different wars with each other in a way.
Yeah.
But there's like the main country of Galbadia. They're basically annexing a bunch of different little towns, and one of them is a town called Timber, and they're trying to basically free Timber from Galbadian control. Spoiler warning: this never gets resolved.
Huh. I guess I just went completely over my head once I got past it.
Well, because the first mission you do after you become seeds is you get assigned to liberate Timber from Galbadia, and then the whole plot with the train thing happens, and you fight the fake president of Galbadia, and then somehow then all of a sudden the sorceress plot happens, and like the whole liberating Timber thing kind of just gets forgotten.
Huh.
Because they never really bring it up again. It just kind of it's implied that it's just I don't know. They never explain it well.
It's just fine now. Whatever. Not important.
Yeah. It served its purpose to introduce us to Renoa.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I guess that's where we should get into this game's story is kind of a mess in a lot of ways because
it was definitely hard to follow.
It is very hard to follow. It also it does a thing where there's like simultaneously two storylines going on at once, where you have Squall's storyline, and then you get like every now and then like Squall and the party will kind of like get like these headaches and they'll kind of lose consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly you're in the past playing as a character named Laguna.
Oh, right. I don't know why. I remember Laguna. I don't know why I blanked out that was like that storyline was playing at the same time, like going back and forth.
Well, it's technically not. It's technically a flashback that you're playing in the past.
Yeah, because you find out later that Laguna is actually Squall's dad, right?
Yeah, that's like the big like reveal at the end of the game that not everyone. It's never explicitly confirmed in game, but it's very obvious.
Yeah, they literally said it without saying it in as clear a way as they could possibly do it.
The line that so Laguna has two associates, Kuros and Ward. They're fun characters. Honestly, if the game was entirely centered around Laguna, Kuros, and Ward, I think it would be a better received game. Personally.
Probably. I mean, if they'd done that, it would have been a lot similar to like Dragon Quest V, like the whole generational aspect.
So there's a line from Kuros right at the end of the game after you meet Laguna in person as Squall, and Kuros makes the comment basically like he definitely takes after his mother, which is kind of an implication of Squall is Laguna's son, but
yeah.
It's never officially confirmed.
that's as clear as they make it.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
they give plenty of hints to lead you to that conclusion.
It's been all but confirmed, like, since the game came out by like the people who made it, but at the time it was kind of one of those ambiguous things.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because a lot of people miss that hint. Like they don't even realize it. Because I remember I'll mention it and they'll be like, "What? Squall's I mean, Squall's Laguna's dad, Laguna's Squall's dad, whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I was trying to absorb as much of the story as possible while playing through 7 and 8, as specifically those two, because I mean, I enjoyed 7 so much that I jumped straight into 8 afterwards,
and you realized, wow, this is different.
Very different. It was definitely a very big learning curve going straight from 7 to 8, both in story and gameplay.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's funny though, going back to like Laguna and the flashback scenes, these are like my favorite part of the game, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, Laguna was definitely a more likable character, at least in the beginning of the game.
Even in the end, honestly, I think Laguna is great. Like, there's a couple subtle moments of him where it's like you're like, this guy's fucking hilarious.
Isn't he like the president or something? Like,
he's the president of the desert city.
Mm-hmm.
Like a spoiler warning. There's a scene later in the game that is 100% blink it or miss it, where you're up on this space station, and there is like this goofy guy in a spacesuit getting pulled off of screen, and they're like, "Mr. President, we need to get you out of here." And he's like, "Wait, I don't want to go." And he's floating around, and you just think like, "Wow, that's weird." And then you later realize, "Oh, that's fucking Laguna." you're like, "Oh, I get it now."
That's fucking funny.
I remember when you were playing this, you would foreshadow things, and you'd ask me about them, and I'd be like, maybe. Sure. I'm like, keep playing, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I definitely texted you a lot playing 8.
I remember at one point you were like, you would ask me early on, like way before it was even like relevant. You're like, is Laguna related to Squall somehow? And I was like, perhaps. Like, I didn't want to like give it away right away, but I was like, you're on the right track.
Just keep it as vague as possible, though.
Yeah, I was very vague on a lot of my responses because you were actually pretty on target with most of your assumptions.
Well, I mean, I played enough RPGs in my life. It's just most of them weren't. Most of them were like action RPGs, and I didn't start playing. Aside from Pokemon, I didn't really start playing JRPGs until like more recently in my life.
It's funny though with the Laguna flashbacks, they happen very like infrequently throughout the game's main story. Mm-hmm. And what I always find interesting is they go in chronological order. So like you're basically just getting the backstory of Laguna, Kyros, and Ward as they go on. And one of my favorites throughout the adventure is the scene where Laguna is in the main city of Galbadia.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to go visit Julia, the piano player. And he parks his fucking tank in the middle of the fucking road. And as this cutscene goes on, you can see the traffic jam just getting worse and worse as you play through this level. And like the whole time, everyone's like, who would park a tank here? And I'm just like... And the whole time it's playing, the song Under Her Control is playing in the background, and it just fits the mood so well for that goofy scene.
Yeah. That's one thing. No, go ahead.
I was just like, just Laguna causing a giant traffic jam and not even acknowledging it.
I was going to say, there's one thing about Final Fantasy VIII that I really enjoyed was they really leaned into a lot of the humor.
8 is a surprisingly funny game. It just, you have to get through a lot of the serious parts because the game is very tonally confused at times.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's times where it wants to be really funny, and then there's times where it's like, this is war. There's also the badass, like the battle of the two gardens, because like later on in the game, like the garden, like school becomes like a floating fortress.
Yeah, it pretty much becomes the airship at one point, even though you do get a plane or something later, don't you?
You get a freaking starship later on.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, but it becomes kind of your transportation at first, and it's basically just a uh, floating school essentially. But
Mhm.
there's a point where you actually have to fight the rival Galbadia garden, and there's literally a scene where like the garden gets crashed. They like crash into each other, and you fight.
Yeah.
It's a pretty epic scene. Like there's some really cool CG cutscenes in 8.
Yeah, I definitely like the CG like graphics and stuff. Even taking into account that the version I was playing was remastered, like there was definitely a lot of huge improvements to the CG in 7.
Hmm. No, like 100%. Uh, so one of my we actually kind of glossed over this, but early in the game, you actually right when you get like your party like together and you're going out on your first mission, um, Robin Williams Sid gives you this he gives you a magic lamp we alluded to earlier, and you can literally open the magic lamp the second you get it, and it takes you to hell.
Oh, jeez.
And you get to fight Diablos, who's a GF. This fight is intimidating at first, but if you know what you're doing, you can beat him in like 5 minutes.
Fair enough.
Because
I don't remember. I think I waited a while before I did it.
Well, I remember getting it. I'm like, oh, what's this? I opened it. I was like, oh shit. What do I do? He's pretty easy though if you know what you're doing because he has gravity magic. So you just steal his gravity magic and you just keep basically halving his life force until he dies.
Huh.
It's a pretty easy fight once you if you know how to manipulate the battle system. It is intimidating at first though for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think whenever I get around to going through it a second time, I'll have a much better idea of what I'm doing at the beginning.
Yeah, because I guess we should talk about some of the game's key moments. Like one of the most well remembered parts in this game is the ending of Disc 1, where you're going to take out the sorceress,
Mhm.
and Squall gets like the whole mission goes like south really fast because Irving can't fire the gun, even though he's like this master sharpshooter.
Yeah, so he says at least
Yeah,
at that point.
and then Squall gets impaled with the sheet of ice, and it spawned one of the most ridiculous fan theories of all time.
What's that?
So when uh when Squall gets impaled with the ice and basically the disc ends, there is this really ridiculous fan theory that Squall dies right there, and the rest of the game is his dying fever dream.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, well, that's why like when you get to the end of the game, there's all that like weird like when Squall's going through time compression, all that weird stuff happens, like the faceless Squall scene
Mhm.
and all of that weird shit. It's this one fan theory that fans just pulled out of their asses, and I'm like, that's clever, but it's a stretch, and it doesn't make any sense in reality.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of wacky like cosmic magic kind of shit that goes on in this game, despite the fact that it's like so like sci-fi cyberpunk, like so like that kind of setting. It really has a lot of those kinds of cosmic type of like themes and vibes.
Hmm. There's also the scene where you discovered like the futuristic city in the desert, where like you literally just knock on the panel, and like this like futuristic door just appears out of nowhere,
Mhm.
and that's how you get to the future city. That
Yeah,
whole
it's so
that whole
bizarre.
area, yeah, that whole area is crazy. Like, and
Because isn't that how you get a bunch of the GFs that you missed?
hmm, yeah, there's a bunch of them there. Because once you get to the end of disc, I think it's like right before disc 4, like right near the end of disc 3. There's like you get this like period of time where you can basically explore the map and go to all the places you missed and like get what you can.
Mhm.
Because once you get speaking of the starship, the Ragnarok, I love that name.
Yeah.
Um, there's a famous scene up in there too, like the scene where Squall and Renoa finally like accept their feelings for each other up in the starship. Um,
Is that when they were in the starship, or is that when they were like in space, like
well,
just floating
they're in
there?
they're in space first, and one of my favorite moments there is the mini game where you have to catch Renoa.
Oh yeah,
Did you miss the first time like I did?
probably. I
I,
probably went into it having no idea what I was doing.
yeah. So I love that scene for one reason. If you fail to catch Renoa the first time around, it just cuts to a scene like a text dialogue just pops up on screen. And it's like Renoa was lost forever. It's like that's dark,
Renoa suffocated in space.
pretty much. But once you find her, you go into the you find the Ragnarok and you have to exterminate it of aliens that are living in it.
Mm.
With this really confusing like mini game where it's like to to clear it of the aliens, you have to kill the two matching aliens in succession, or else they'll just respawn infinitely.
Oh yeah, that was really annoying.
Thank God I had a guide because fuck figuring that out.
Yeah, that would have been useful.
Yeah. There's so many like weird plots in this, like especially like the big spoiler of this game, the whole reveal that all the characters were in the orphanage together, and that's how they know each other.
Yeah, it was everyone except for Renoa, right?
Yeah, because she wasn't part of the orphanage. She had her family.
Yeah, but then she was slated to be like the next sorcerer because it turns out that the sorcerer or the sorceress or whatever was actually like a witch that was like taking. Basically, she's a body snatcher.
Yeah, she comes. So basically, what happens is like Renoa gets Adia's power because Adia was the woman that ran the orphanage, and she's Sid's wife. She was a sorceress, and she was the first one to get possessed by the sorceress Ultimisia.
Mm-hmm.
And Adia transfers her powers to Renoa because I guess Renoa also had sorceress abilities, but they were dormant. I think at the time it's confusing. Either that they were dormant or she had the ability to possess them.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Or she
confusing
was
stuff like that.
compatible at least.
Yeah, because Renoa gets Adia's power, and then Renoa becomes a sorceress, and then
Mm-hmm.
she later gets Adele's power as well, the other sorceress that you fight.
Yeah.
And then she also gets Ultimisia's power later on. So she just becomes like mega sorceress.
Even though, like, I mean, I don't know if I was just doing something wrong, but I mean, she was in my party pretty much the whole time, and she wasn't like the most useful.
Yeah, you got to know what you have to like get your GFs just right, and then yeah, it's hard to
Yeah.
say. This game
Yeah. See,
also has
even when you know, you don't know.
yeah. This game also has limit breaks, but they're more like desperation attacks in six, where they only really happen when you're in desperate need.
Yeah, it's only when like your health hits like 20% or something like that, right?
Yeah, and if you know what you're doing, your health's never going to get that low, so you're never going to see them.
Right.
Yeah. So another key thing in this plot is the character of Elone, or I forget her name, the Laguna's daughter or
Right.
stepdaughter.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, she was the daughter of the piano lady, right?
no, she was the adopted daughter of Squall's mother, Rain.
Oh, okay. I must have got confused because for some reason I thought she was the piano girl.
No. So it's confusing because Laguna, you find out, had a crush on this piano player named Julia. Julia Hartley. That last name's familiar.
Yeah.
Um, and they kind of had a little thing going on, but Laguna goes missing in the final mission you play following that, where they fall off the side of the waterfall and they essentially go MIA. She thought he was dead, so she moved on and married General Caraway, who was Renoa's father, and it's implied that Julia was Renoa's mother.
Oh, okay.
Which that leads to some weird situations where you realize Squall's dad was in love with Renoa's mom initially.
Yeah.
But
That's crazy. It actually is a really interesting story. Like if they made the story of Final Fantasy VIII into like a TV show, and they found a way to like tell the story in a more cohesive, like episodic way, I think it would actually be really good.
Honestly, I feel like 8 could use a remake because it would actually fix a lot of the bullshit problems that its story has.
Yeah, it would do the opposite of what the 7 remake supposedly did, who had changed everything in all the worst ways.
Yeah, depending on who you ask.
I mean,
Yeah,
I still want to play it whenever I manage to get one of the next gen consoles, but
yeah. No, it's worth playing. I don't like the fact that they changed the story, but that's an argument for another day.
well,
Um,
I don't have the childhood nostalgia for any of these games, so
that's true.
to me, it's just an alternate telling of the same story.
Yeah. Um, yeah, going in through eight though, like Laguna, like after he falls off the waterfall, he washes up in the shores of the town where Rain is from, and she basically takes him in, and they're basically like bounty hunters for hire for her. Basically, she took them in, and they wanted to do something to help, even though Rain seemed to have it under control.
Yeah, they pretty much just become like guards for the town.
When you interact with Rain, like the more you interact with Rain, there, the more you realize that this woman is very clearly Squall's mother.
Mm-hmm.
It's also not implied. They never say her last name in game, but I believe her last name is Rain Lionheart. Like that's where like Squall's last name came from,
Okay.
or Leonhardt, whatever, however it's pronounced. Um, because like you can tell that she's kind of a hard ass, and she's basically like she doesn't put up with Laguna's shit at all, which is great.
Yeah.
But she has an adopted daughter, Alone, and at one point, Alone has like this weird like ability that like they're kind of like the some of the higher ups from the futuristic city are after. I think the city's name is like STR or STR. I can't
I don't
remember it.
remember.
Yeah. They basically want her for her abilities, and she gets kidnapped by them, and Laguna ends up going to rescue her. Um, Also by this point he had married Rain, and he ends up going and basically becoming the president of that city in the process. Meanwhile, it's all implied through backstory that Rain had a child and then died of childbirth, and that's why she's not around anymore, and that's how Squall ended up in the orphanage.
Right.
Because he went back to. It's never really implied what happened there. I think Laguna knew he existed, but didn't know what happened to him or something like that.
Well, it's implied when they meet that he knows that it's his son. So I guess he just dropped him in an orphanage one day. I don't understand why he
I don't
left
think
him, but
I don't think Laguna dropped him in the orphanage. I think Laguna was too busy being the president that he didn't even know. I don't think he knew Squall was born initially. I think he thought Squall died with Rain.
oh, okay.
I think that's the implication, because it's weirdly how it's not very clear how they explain it.
Mm.
But this is also how you find out that Elone's ability is she's able to take people's subconscious and send it to the past. And she's actually sending Squall to the past in an attempt to change the past, but she doesn't realize she can't actually change the past by doing this.
Right.
So it's all a complete fool. It's like a fool's errand, but it's basically the reason why she's sending Squall to the past to see all these different moments.
I totally forgot about that.
Eight's story is very. There's so many plot threads going on, and they don't mesh together very well.
They really don't.
That is the key problem with this story, and why I don't think eight has a good story. It has a flawed story, and there's so much potential. There's so much potential to eight's story, and I feel like the way it's handled kind of hurts it in the long run.
Well, I feel like making them all part of the same orphanage was probably their attempt in trying to tie the stories together, but it just didn't function that way.
Yeah, it's like they just kind of. It's like they took a bunch of ideas, threw them at the wall, and saw what stuck.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I love this game, but I also hate this game at the same time because of how convoluted it. Like this. You thought Seven's story was convoluted. Eight's story is like 4 times as convoluted as Seven's is.
Well, I will say, I mean, the amount of time and effort that went into me trying to comprehend it all, it was actually a point. I think it was towards the end of me playing that. I guess I guess I had just sat up out of a dead sleep at one point, and I turned to my wife, and I held out my hand and I said, "Here, this is a GF. Take this." And I just laid back down and went to sleep after she like took it. And, like she told me about it the next day. I don't remember doing it at all. It's she was so confused.
Ugh. Final Fantasy VIII does. This is what Final Fantasy VIII does to a person.
But I was just I had been spending so much brain power trying to comprehend the game and the story, and at that point I was just figuring out the right way to use the junction system. It's just I was putting so much thought into playing this game that I don't know why I just did that in the middle of the night.
There's also the subplot about how the using the GFs too much like erodes memories, and that's why none of the characters remembered they were in the orphanage together.
Oh,
Except for Irvine, because he had a journal.
okay. So why didn't he say anything?
Good question.
Because if he remembers all of them and he said, "Hey, I know you," unless he's just writing down events and doesn't know what they look like.
I think it's supposed to imply that Irvine's kind of a dick, but because I mean that's why he wouldn't shoot Adia, because he remembered who Adia was.
Yeah, he knew that it was like their orphanage mother or whatever.
Yep. It's all stuff that like it's supposed to tie together, but it just leaves you more frustrated than relieved after you find out.
Yeah, because like when you're initially going through that assassination attempt, and he's like, "Oh, I can't shoot." Like you as the player is like, "What the fuck, dude? What do you mean? That's why we brought you."
Yeah. Yeah. Like so many parts of this game are like frustrating, but at the same time though, it's like I love the idea behind like the whole military school aspect. And another thing about this game that this has become kind of like a debate topic that I've been having with a bunch of like people in the podcast community, but I personally believe Final Fantasy VIII has the best Final Fantasy soundtrack ever made.
I mean, that's definitely an opinion.
I mean, you've only played like 4 of them, so you don't have a huge sample size yet, but
I don't. But I will say I remember a ton of the tracks from 7. I don't remember a single one from 8. So
I think you probably have to play it some more. Like to me,
I'm
like
sure,
there are some pretty iconic tracks in 8. Like the most memorable one to me is like "Man with the Machine Gun," which is Laguna's battle theme.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one is super catchy. You also got Blue Fields. The overworld theme is like one of the greatest overworld themes of any RPG, in my opinion, because it's just I love the cellos and like all the instrumentation, because this was like the first Final Fantasy that they used real instruments on, which it sounds so good.
Yeah.
Although, like
I'm
go on.
trying to think. Well, wasn't there a song that was similar to one from 7?
In what way?
I don't remember which one it was. I just remember there. Maybe it was like the little jingle that goes at the end of a battle.
Oh, the victory theme. That's
Yeah.
ever, yeah.
I was trying to think because I knew that there was something that was similar, but it wasn't quite the same from 7.
Yeah, it's the same like the
Yeah.
but then it has a different after theme that plays.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the song "Eyes on Me," which is like the vocal track that plays throughout the game.
Yeah.
That was actually like played in like record stores and stuff in Japan. Like it was actually a pretty big hit over there.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, just based on the knowledge that I have about it, it seems like a lot of video game tracks and anime tracks tend to kind of become kind of like the way that we get like the Moana song playing on the radio and the Frozen song playing on the radio.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing over there, but for anime video games.
Yeah, I mean,
which is way cooler in my opinion.
Yeah, honestly, like in my opinion, like Nobuo Uematsu is quite possibly one of the greatest composers of all time. He was the sole composer of Final Fantasy 1 through 9.
Mm-hmm.
And he did the majority of 10. He kind of fell off after 10, like he went to do other projects, but he is like to me like one of the greatest composers of all time. Like, I love everything that man produced.
I imagine after doing 10 games from the same series, you kind of want to branch out and do something different.
Yeah, I mean, most likely. I mean, he did the Super Smash Brothers Brawl theme.
Oh, okay. I like that one.
Yeah, like he's just like he has. When you get around to playing the Super Nintendo Final Fantasies, you'll really see you'll get an understanding for just how talented this guy was, like what he could do with those old sound cards.
Hmm. Did what was the first Super Nintendo one?
4.
Okay, actual 4 or American 4?
So fun fact, there actually was no American 4.
Oh, okay. I just knew that there was a difference between
So
the English release or the Western releases and
the way it went was we got Final Fantasy 1 over here, which was Final Fantasy 1 in Japan. When it came out over here, though, like 2 and 3 were already out in Japan, and like the next one coming out was 4. So rather than waste their time releasing 2 NES games, they decided to just release 4 instead, which was the new Super Nintendo game. But they didn't want to confuse everybody, so they named 4 2 over here. So it went 1 2. Then when 5 came out, we were originally going to get 5 and they were going to call it 3, but they determined that 5 was too hard for Americans because we're apparently stupid. Debatable how right they were there. And so they canceled 5 and instead they released 6, and they released 6 as 3. Then when they got to 7, they decided this is going to get confusing. Just call it 7. So it went 1 2 3 7.
That's so strange.
Well, Europe didn't get 1 through 6, period. They just got 7. So
I mean, if you're gonna start it out of order, that's a good one to start on.
Retroactively, eventually, we got the rest of the series properly numbered. We didn't get original 3 until the Pixel remasters came out. Because the only version
I was gonna say, now we got like what 1 through 10 all on the Switch, and then like a few other ones
plus
like,
12.
Yeah,
the only one you can't play. You can play 1 through 12 on the Switch. The only one you can't play is 11, but 11's an MMO. So
yeah, I thought it was 13 on there too.
Nah, 13 is only on 360 and PS3.
Oh.
13, 13.2, and 13.3 Lightning Returns, whatever it's called.
They're not on like Xbox One or PS4 as like a backwards compatible game, or
not PS4, maybe Xbox One.
I'll have to look into that.
Ask Thrak on the server at some point. He might know. He's a big Xbox guy.
I'm generally not. I just happen to have one.
Yeah.
Just kind of worked out that way. I had a PS4, but it broke.
Yeah, they're definitely not on PS4. They might be backwards compatible.
All right.
Thrak, if you're listening, give us the deets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else we want to cover? I mean, we gave the basic explanation of 8 and how it's. Our explanation of 8 is just as confusing as the game.
And we talked a little bit about Crisis Core, but we didn't really. I mean, obviously, I haven't beaten the game, so we can't go into too much detail.
I mean, the real thing to know about Crisis Core is essentially it's a prequel to 7, and it goes over. It's basically Zack's story,
and it's an action RPG, which is refreshing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a more basic Kingdom Hearts in a way.
Yeah. But I'm enjoying the gameplay of it so far. I mean, I like those kinds of games. You know, the battle roll is my bread and butter.
I enjoy too because it gives you get to see an earlier version of Midgar too, and like you get to see all these different characters at different points in their lives before the events of 7 really started.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot better perspective on a lot of these characters and events that lead up to 7. It's definitely given me more of a clearer understanding of the world.
Also, Crisis Core was the most popular thing to come out of the expanded universe of 7 because So they like to call the expanded universe of VII the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, but fans like to refer to it as the complication of Final Fantasy VII.
That's fair.
Because literally everything that came out as a part of that compilation was generally not well received, with
Mhm.
the exception of Crisis Core. Crisis Core was very well received.
And that was originally a PSP game, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus they literally were spin-off games based around the two most popular like side characters in Seven, because everyone loved Vincent and everyone loved Zack. People
Yeah.
loved Zack back in the day, even though Zack literally appears in 2 cutscenes.
Yeah.
And one of them you don't even have to watch. Like one of them you have to go out of your way to see. So
I think I stumbled on that one by accident.
yeah. Well, I remember you had said it, you'd seen it. I'm like, oh wow, you went all out, and you were like, no, I think I found it by accident.
Yeah, I was just exploring around and I just had, maybe it was because it's in the Shinra Mansion where you get that, right?
Yeah, you have to
You
go
know,
down
I
to the.
probably went back to get Vincent and just triggered it by accident.
That's probably it. Because literally that cutscene alone, it sparked so much popularity for Zack that they ended up making Crisis Core about Zack, and it ended up going much better than Dirge of Cerberus did. That's for sure.
Fair enough. A little disappointing though, because it would have been kind of cool to have a decent shooter Final Fantasy game.
So the problem with the reason why Crisis Core I think worked is because it was a prequel, and like they didn't have to like create new content really. They just only had to make some basic stuff to explain.
Yeah, expand a little bit on the pre-existing stuff.
Dirge of Cerberus takes place after Advent Children, and
Ooh, that's awkward.
yeah, it's so the main cast only appears in like a couple scenes here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, they appear like in one cutscene, and then they call Vincent on a cell phone at one point.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a I call it a so bad it's good kind of game because like it's hilarious. Like it's like this is the most they tried kind of game I've ever played.
Mm-hmm. So I know that there was like the Advent Children movie. We watched that a while back.
Yes.
And I know that there were a couple of other attempts of movies or series, but has actually been like a legitimate Final Fantasy anime based on any of the games. Like,
So there's an OVA based off of Final Fantasy VII.
well, I mean, that makes sense.
There's
I mean, like,
it's called,
have they ever actually like attempted to tell the story of one of the video games in anime form?
no. The closest thing is there's the I mentioned the OVA. It's called Last Order, and it is essentially an anime adaptation of the Nibelheim incident.
Okay.
It's really good. It's not dubbed, which kind of sucks, but it's actually a really good adaptation. Like you can probably find it on YouTube at this point. It's not super hard to find.
I'll have to look into that.
There was also this like other OVA that was like it was called like Episode of Denzel, and it explained the little boy from Advent Children. It gave him a backstory.
I barely remember. I remember
Yeah.
like a few key details of that movie.
It's
I
not as
remember-
interesting. It's not as interesting as Last Order.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Cloud was like rotting or something, and there was a bunch of Sephiroth clones, and then one of them turned into Sephiroth, and I think there was like a ghost Aerith at one point or something.
Yeah, kind of. No one really knows.
I remember the big fight at the end with the Sephiroth. What was it? The One Winged Angel song.
Yeah. Well, there was that, and then there was the Bahamut fight too. Those are the only really interesting parts of that movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like everybody watched that movie just to see some cool sword fight stuff.
I mean, at the time it came out, it was the most impressive CGI movie I think ever made.
It was definitely impressive. When was it made?
Originally, it was the original release was like 2006, I want to say.
Yeah, I guess that would really be really high quality for 2006.
The version we watched was the updated, the redone version. I think that was like 2011, 12ish. The one that basically fixed all the plot holes of the original version.
Oh, okay. Wow, that fixed the plot holes.
You should watch the original at some point. It's wow. Like there's some pretty I think I tried explaining what they changed when we were watching it, but you were getting confused the whole time. So I'm like, let's just watch it.
That's understandable.
There was a Final Fantasy anime.
Was it just doing like its own story, like kind of like Dragon Quest I?
It, it even worse than that because it barely felt like Final Fantasy.
Really?
It's called Final Fantasy Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
There's like vague Final Fantasy themes throughout it, but it's like this original it's only 26 episodes.
Okay.
I found the full box set of it at Anime Boston like years ago, and I've yet to watch it just because it's not good, and I don't really feel like watching crap right now. But
that's fair.
Someday I will sit down and watch that pile of trash and just get an opinion on it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, there's a lot of things that people have told me have been crap, and well, I'll go watch it and I'll find a lot of things to enjoy about it, or video games for that matter.
Well, because there was also the Final Fantasy movie, The Spirits Within, which was like a theatrical released film, but it was a completely original story, and no one really got it, and it's not a great film at all.
Ugh.
It looks pretty though. It looked really pretty for the time.
No, that's something at least.
Yeah. Other than that, though, like this era of Final Fantasy is both like probably my favorite era, but it's also the most confusing era of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I understand that.
Like I swear to God, like when you play 9, you're gonna be like, holy shit, why is this so simple and like easy to figure out?
Well, you know what? At this point, I think I could do with some simple and easy.
You're gonna play 9 and be like, wow, this is like Dragon Quest. It's easy and fun.
Because that's the thing is like, there's so many games I want to play right now, but I have like no time to play anything because I work until 5 every day, and then I'm up with my daughter until like 8 or 9, and she's been doing this thing lately where she wakes up super early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
or she just won't go to sleep until like 10.
Yeah.
She just turned 2 days ago, so like she's at that age now where she's getting difficult.
The terrible twos.
Yeah. So with all of that, it makes it really hard to have free time. My mom only takes her like once every couple weeks, so that's like my one opportunity. Like, yes, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna play some fucking video games. And,
yep.
Get my 2-liter Mountain Dew.
Yep. You'd think I live alone, and you'd think I'd have time to play games, but I also don't because I'm always at work, and when I'm at home, I'm sleeping.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, you're also a homeowner, so you got bills to pay too.
Bills to pay. I also got manga to read and anime to watch, and I got too many hobbies. That's my problem.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about geek addicts like us is there's too many hobbies and they're all expensive.
Yep. I mean, thankfully,
and time consuming.
Thankfully, being a game collector for so many years, because of how absurd that hobby is, getting into manga has been so nice because manga is so cheap in comparison.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it still can add up if you're getting a fairly large series.
Yeah.
I mean, like one of the things I want to collect is the Berserk series, and if I'm gonna do it, I want to get the deluxe versions, and that's pretty pricey.
Those big ass Dark Horse leather bound books that I see at the store all the time.
It's so nice though. They would look so nice on my bookshelf.
My favorite. I saw a picture on Reddit recently. It was like on the manga collectors Discord, and it was like this guy that was like, I finally completed all of my Dark Horse manga collection, and he had all of the leather bound he had like all of Berserk, Hellsing, one of the other ones that they did in that huge style as well, and they were all still wrapped, and all the comments were like, read your damn manga. It's like, I was looking at the picture, I'm like, why do they look weird? I'm like, he didn't take the plastic wrap off because he didn't read any of them.
That drives me nuts. I don't know, man. I mean, you know me, I'm always reading something. So like, if I get a book, I'm gonna read it.
Well, that's my favorite joke. Me and Alex have whenever we go to like Barnes and Noble or something. We'll go through the manga section and we'll see the wrapped ones, and Alex will always be like, "You know what that means? It's either extremely gory or extremely porny." And you can decide which is which. Usually it's the latter, the latter, but
God, I miss bookstores.
it's weird. They're everywhere down here.
They're like they've completely disappeared here. I don't know. Ever since Borders left, like there's been a couple of failed attempts, and then they all just went away. And like now, there's no bookstores. There's no DVD
Yeah.
stores. There's like the one GameStop. And this is like a pretty well populated area. You'd think we'd have these things, but we don't.
Yeah, the only store you guys really have is Newbury Comics.
Yeah, and even that we have the one in the mall, and then you got to go to Boston to get to the other one. Really, I mean, I think there might be one in Braintree.
There's
But
there was one in Braintree. I don't
I think that
know
mall
though.
shut down though.
That's the thing. I have no idea. I haven't been there, and last time I was at the Braintree Mall was before COVID. So
Yeah, it's a long ass time ago for me.
yeah,
I don't get up that way very often anyway.
it's funny though. Down here, like there's a Barnes and Noble literally up the street from me, and then there's like four other ones just in the area that I get like within driving distance. They're everywhere down here. It's weird.
That's wild.
They're
Some point when I get some more money, when I have a little bit of money to spend, I'm gonna have to come and visit you and just hit up a bunch of bookstores.
Yeah, we'll go on a trip. Just all the Barnes and Nobles. They're everywhere down here.
Maybe some secondhand game shops or something.
Yeah, there's a couple of those as well. They're popping up all over the place now.
I still haven't checked out that new Bowser's Basement yet.
Whenever I'm back at home, I gotta visit that because I want to support the owner, but also I gotta check it out.
Yeah. Well, whenever you do, give me a heads up, and I'll come with you.
Yeah, I gotta find the time. That's the only problem because like I just never 2 hour drive and I never have time to get up there because it's like I'd have to plan an entire day around it.
Yeah. Understandable.
That's the sad part about moving.
Yeah.
Makes life harder.
It's definitely kind of a bummer. But I'll probably end up moving out at some point. The state's so fucking expensive to live in.
Connecticut ain't much cheaper. That's all I can say. It's actually kind of worse in some regards.
Yikes.
Yeah. But I don't have to do inspection stickers anymore, so that's fun.
Yeah, that's not bad.
We just have to do emissions tests. That's like our thing that we have, but it's like $10. You just bring the car into the shop, they check it, and then they send off your information to the DMV, and they give you a piece of paper, and they're like, "You're good."
And isn't it like if your car like was made before a certain year, then it doesn't have to pass the emissions?
Yeah, it's some sort of thing like that. I think it's honestly just a scam to get money out of you, but
I mean, let's be real, like all of that is a scam.
Yeah, probably. Inspection stickers are pretty much a scam as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, though, not much else to say on this one. I think we got probably another good 3-hour podcast out of this.
Yeah, it's still. I still think that we had a good hour on this one from the last one, so I'd say we were pretty well, pretty timely with this one.
Yeah, I mean, we could have done a deep dive into the lore of Final Fantasy VIII, but I don't have the sanity for that right now. So,
and I had a hard enough time following it the first time.
Yeah,
maybe if I ever play it again, or whenever I get the time to play it again, and I have the facts more straight, then we could revisit it as its own episode.
Yeah, maybe at some point.
But at this point, I'm 2 years removed from playing both of these games, so like I remember a lot, but there's also a ton more that I've forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna talk about Final Fantasy VIII again on another podcast at some point. I've already talked about it once on a shout out to Josh from a Still Loading podcast. I did a whole episode talking about VIII over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of the 8 guy now in the podcasting community, so I'm sure I'll be invited to other things at some point.
Oh, I'm sure. I've already heard you discuss Final Fantasy VIII on multiple podcasts, both yours and other people's. So.
Yep. I'm the 8 guy and I'm the Persona 4 guy. Those are my 2 games.
That's one I still need to dive into. But I feel like that's going to be like one of those ones that takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I've been wary about starting it until I know I'm going to have time to play it, because I don't want to have big gaps in between and then go back to it and not have any idea what the hell I was doing.
Yeah. At least on the plus side with that, you can play it on the Vita, so at least you can handheld play and multitask. But
that's true. And I have it on the Vita and on the Switch, so I could kind of take my pick.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it just feels right on the Vita, but I think that might just be nostalgia speaking.
That's fair.
But yeah, so I guess this can be a good time to wrap it up. Anything else you want to add before we end this one off?
No, not really.
All right.
Final Fantasy VII is a good game.
Yeah. 8 is a flawed game that I enjoy. That's the best way I can describe it.
8 is a good game when you understand how it works.
And even then, it's still confusing.
No, for sure. But, comes with the territory. I feel like a lot of fantasy games are confusing.
Yeah. Especially RPGs from that era.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. Geek Addicts, you can find us every Monday over on the GNC feed. It'll be releasing alongside Main Gaming and Collecting. I'm sure at the time of this recording, Alex is still away, so she'll probably be back around December-ish, late mid-December. But until then, you can follow us on all the social medias, Linktree / The Barber Games, and you can come join us over at the Discord server, the GNC Podcast Network. We're all a bunch of nice people there, don't worry. And mostly, yeah. That Alex, she's a scary one. No, she's gonna kill me. She'll kill me later. But anyways, guys, once again, we will see you all next time.
Have a good one.